Here to keep the chase going, share information, spread unity, preserve our heritage and our culture. We're trying to achieve something that you just can't catch. We're always trying to find a better way, trying to make better dogs. That's what Dixie Doggers Podcast is. That's who we are.
This episode is brought to you by Rankin Ranch 38 Cattle Company. Marc Rankin specializes in Brahma and Brahma Cross cattle in Oglethorpe County, Georgia. You can contact him at 407-832-2077. 407-832-2077. This episode is also brought to you by Phil Wilson of UC Hunting Properties. If you're buying or selling land, farms, or hunting property, these folks know land. You can contact him at 678-791-3483, 678-791-3483, or visit his website down below in the description.
All right, everybody. Nate and Joey back here with you one more time.
Yes,
Dixie
indeed.
Doggers Podcast coming to you. We're not downtown at the dog pound. We're back house at the shed house right now, out back again. We had some technical difficulties and we had to move again. But I have mustered up enough courage to message this man and ask him to be a guest on our show. Seen some of his dogs, and they are really, truly high-performance animals. And I've always been kind of curious of just curious of him and himself and his breeding and his dogs. And this is Mr. H. Lee Robinson that we have on with us tonight. Mr. Robinson, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. A little bit of a sore throat, but I'm doing good.
I got you.
I haven't been sick in a long time, so I can't complain.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. I had it about whooped me about a month ago. Finally about halfway over it, I believe, and it'll get better.
Yep.
So we give us a little background on yourself. You know, tell our listeners, and keep in mind we got listeners all over the world. So you're on a maybe we'll have 1 million people listening to this. Probably not, but it sounds good. And you know, and because I really want to get into some of the breedings and stuff like that. And like we had talked about a while ago and what to look for. But first, give them a little information on who you are and what you're doing, what you're doing with your dogs, what breeds you got. Just give them a little rundown on that.
All right. Well, my name is Lee Robinson. The H is just my first initial, but
okay.
I mean, my first name is Harold, but I don't go by that. I go by Lee Robinson.
Yes, sir.
We just use H just because, no particular reason. But
okay.
But just call me Lee. But anyway, I've had animals my whole life, whether it be dogs or catching snakes or lizards when I was a kid, or having fish tanks and just always been into the animals. I worked at the Cincinnati Zoo for just a summertime as an internship. Got 2 degrees in animal sciences, bachelor's and master's degree from the University of Illinois, certified in artificial insemination. But what really has been my biggest asset is probably just having a good eye and seeing a good animal, recognizing the differences that other people don't notice. I'm the type of person that I can look at a freshly painted car, and I'm the one that will see the little speck of trash under the paint that most people don't see. I see details that a lot of people don't see, and it's just kind of a unique thing that when I see a dog doing something, I'll tell him it's time to put that dog up or time to do something different. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people will question me and they want to keep working the animal longer, and 2 or 3 minutes later, the dog's starting to lose its interest. And I told them they should have put that dog up because, you know, not everybody has a dog of the same quality of what we're running. We had one guy come out here and said, I saw your dog do this, and I want my dog to do that. So we can get him to do it because he's got enough potential for it, but it's going to take a little while. He didn't believe me. He said, if your dog will do it, my dog will do it. Unfortunately, that's not the way it always works, but some people just can't see it until the worse. I can tell you this, the worse your eye is, the more you have to test, because the better eye can see what's going to happen before it happens, because there's little details the dog will show you on whether it's running out of air, running out of interest, running out of gas, getting stressed, getting dominated, or whatever it is, that those hurdles. There's always signs. You know, you hear these people on the news television saying the dog never bit anybody before. He never did this before. And I'm like, yeah, he's shown you signs. You just didn't know how to see them. So, having a good eye is very important. And like I told you before we started recording, even though we're going to discuss genetics, because I taught biology and genetics for 25 years, a little over 25 years actually. But no matter how good you are at genetics, if you're starting with the wrong dog, you're not going to get anywhere. Genetics will not replace starting with a proper foundation. You have to have a good eye. And the better your eye is, the easier it is to figure out to separate the coals from the workers.
Mm-hmm.
The worse your eye is, the hard. Some people just don't see it until it's at the finish line. They just got to push it, make it or break it. Pressure makes diamonds, but it also busts pipe.
That's right. There's no doubt about that. And I've been guilty of that myself over the years of doing it emotionally, being emotionally attached to a dog, and because I like him, and just giving it way more time than it should have. And the whole time it's not performing, but yet it's like I'm making an excuse. And finally I had to realize that myself. I'm like, look, they got it or they don't. And there's a time that it can be expressed, and there's a time that it'll come out. And some of them just don't have it. Like you said, having that good eye, that's why guys like yourself who are breeding these high performance dogs, that's why you can be so consistent with it.
Yeah. And, they do have it or they don't, but at the same time, it's very important to do the development as a schooling process. Mm-hmm. Don't take a dog from A to Z the first time out. Mm-hmm. For example, I know a young person who was going to take one of their dogs that they got from us, and it was a protection trained dog, and they were going to take it on a hog hunt. And I said, well, the first time you take it in a hog hunt, make sure you're only going with people that the dog knows, because you don't want the dog to, when the man's trying to break the hog off the dog, or the dog off the hog, you don't want that dog to target the man. That's not a good idea. I don't like dual purpose dogs on that. I like a dog specifically for hogs or specifically for protection. I don't like to do the dual purpose stuff. I think you're asking for trouble. Mm-hmm. But they were going to take it, and they're like, well, I want to see what he'll do. And I'm like, well, take the dog in on a leash, have a dog of the opposite gender already on that hog, and then walk your dog in on leash so you can put that dog on the ear the first time. They're like, no, I'm not going to do that. It's going to be too hectic, too crazy. This is a person that was going to have a hard time maybe handling the dog. They were just going to release the dog loose and see what it did. And I'm like, that's just not the way to start a dog. You need to start that dog in. Some people think a dog has a style where it catches the muzzle, it catches the ear, it catches the back of the neck, it catches the leg, it catches the shoulder, it catches the back leg. It's mouthy or it's not. So a lot of that has to do with that first experience. Take that dog in there and put them on what you want them to be on, and let them be successful. And if they get someplace that they're not supposed to be, take them off of it ASAP and put them where they're supposed to be, because they will learn success, and that's what they will begin to target and favor in their performance. So dogs can be taught a process, and you don't want that. Let's put it this way: if Bruce Lee got hit by Mike Tyson when Bruce Lee was 12 years old and Mike Tyson was 20 and in his prime, Bruce Lee may have never become a great fighter. So if we're going to be honest about hog catch or protection work, it's combat. It is a type of combat. So you need that experience to be progressive. Start with A, then B, then C. So you do progress it, but at the same time, if you see a dog want to do what's called capping the drive, you want that dog to always want to be willing to go further than you're letting it go, and you cap it. Not the dog is reaching its peak, and then you stop it right there before he goes beyond that cap. Because if you just let him work to death, these animals are flesh and blood. They're not machines. They're not Terminators that just keep coming and keep coming, like in that movie, The Terminator, with Arnold Schwarzenegger. These are flesh and blood. So you have to make those early experiences positive experiences. Mm-hmm. But that's part of being able to read a dog, and developing that dog properly has a lot to do with how well that dog's going to perform. Now, at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, you're not going to turn a cur a quitter into a working dog, but what you can do is you can take that working dog to its full potential.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like a dog that regrips a lot. I want them steady on the grip. I don't want a dog regripping, because if they regrip, every time they open that mouth to regrip, it's a chance to slip.
Yes, sir.
The only time they should regrip is if the bite is shallow. If the bite is full and deep, there's no need to regrip.
Yeah, and on that part, I'm glad you said that, because I've seen so many dogs in the woods over the years, and they were good dogs. Don't get me wrong, but their bite, that's one of the things that I come from a game dog background originally, and so I always pay attention to how full of a bite do they have on it. I see a lot of dogs, and they're only about halfway in, and that bothers me. Like, I want a dog all the way in. How important is that? How important is it for that dog to get a full, deep bite?
Well, I would say halfway in to full is what I would want. What I don't want to see is a frontal bite.
Mm-hmm.
Halfway, not ideal, but sufficient if they have a strong grip.
Yeah, these were holding.
I definitely don't want to see the dog only biting with the front of its mouth, because then when it's biting with the front of its mouth, it's looking for the back door. It's thinking about getting out of there the whole time.
Yeah,
it's not confident. A dog that's confident and committed, a lot of times they lack that self-preservation. Sometimes they might get out front. And we've had a few that were really good catch dogs, but they might have short careers because they work out in front where they can get hit, and that's a dangerous place.
Mm-hmm. There's no doubt about it. And you were talking about, you said that you're capping. So for the listeners out there, we have a lot of younger guys, a lot of newer hunters, and a lot of newer dog handlers, and so that way they get the full picture of what you're saying is, just because that dog will go more doesn't mean that you have to let it. You set the pace.
You read the dog, and if the dog is super gung ho and it's just pushing, but you can see that it's breathing a little faster than maybe if it had experience. Because I'll tell you this, when I'm decoying, in case you don't know what decoy is, or agitation work, that's when you're doing protection work. So we call it a decoy. It's not like a duck. Mm-hmm. You have a decoy for duck hunting, but when you're doing protection work, you have a human decoy that's pretending to be a bad guy. And you can have somebody that's never done it before, and what they're doing physically is not that hard, but they run out of air because they're nervous. They've never done it before. Or maybe they hold their breath. Maybe they're not nervous, but maybe they hold their breath. And so when they hold their breath for too long, as you're thinking about what they're doing, they're not thinking about breathing, and they run out of air. Well, cut your dog some slack here. And remember, this is a flesh and blood animal. So even if it's doing really, really good, watch the dog's respiration. If it's starting to breathe really fast, maybe it was analyzing everything. Don't make excuses, but be aware of what's going on. You want that dog committed, going 110% or 100%. I don't believe in 110%, but people say it all the time. But you want him going 100%, and then when he's going 100%, you get in there on a leash that dog, break him off, and then pull him back. Let him scratch back into the hog one more time, break him off again, and put him up.
I got you. Now,
that's how I would start the dog.
Yeah.
And I would maybe have a person holding the dog's back legs just so you can make sure you target good that first time. Just to make sure you're targeting, teaching that dog to target what you want it to target. Because you don't want the dog running out front. You don't want the dog grabbing the leg. They might grab a leg just because they've been maybe they got puppies. When they're puppies, they might have gotten a puppy fight. Learn to bite a leg. You don't want that.
That's right. Yeah, that's one of the handiest things, like you said, that I was taught as well is if a dog grabs the back leg, pull him off right then, put him up there on the ear, move him to the head. And
grab the collar right behind his head, take his front legs off the ground, and lower his mouth right on the ear.
Yes, sir. And it works. I've actually had a few guys. Of course, they know more than everybody, without a doubt. They're the most intelligent people there, and they're like, oh no, it's either like you were saying a while ago. They really believe that this dog is either a leg dog or a snout dog or a jaw dog or an ear dog. Like you can't.
So it's very easy.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, they're like you can't manipulate the dog to catch. I was like, well, you're not manipulating it. You're teaching it. You're showing it. All you're doing is saying, hey, go this way. I can't teach the dog to bite, but it's like, okay, this is what I want you to bite.
Yeah, we teach dogs in protection work to bite the forearm, to bite the bicep, to bite the tricep, to bite the leg. And when you're targeting a human being and you can teach to target different animals or areas, there's no reason you can't do the same thing with an animal.
That's right. How long have you been doing protection work, Lee?
Oh, I started doing protection work in 2000, but I was training dogs probably close to 10 years before that. We did some obedience stuff back when I was in college. I'm 55 years old.
Yes, sir.
We've been breeding and training guard dogs for 25 years and taught genetics for 25 years. And this is who I am. I've dedicated my life to working dogs, producing dogs. We run some sorrels, American Pit Bull Terriers, game bred lines. Got a little bit of, Bert.
Yes,
there's Rick sorrels and Bert sorrels, but we're running Bert sorrel stuff. And then we got a little bit of Mayday blood coming in there with some Red Boy Jocko Bolio Tombstone stuff on a couple of the dogs, but most of them are pretty much pure sorrels. And then we also have our American Sentinels. And the reason we have the Pit Bulls is because the American Sentinel is composed of 4 basic breeds. One of them is the American Pit Bull Terrier. Then the other is a Tosa Inu, which is a Japanese fighting mastiff.
Yes, sir.
Very athletic mastiff in general. Then we also have the English Mastiff. And the English Mastiff is underrated because most people seen some English Mastiffs that are real lazy and lethargic and couch potatoes, shy and timid and not healthy. But you find a solid one that works, they're really pretty strong dogs and very, very durable. It's hard to hurt one of them. Their hide is like a honey badger's hide. I mean, it's just very tough. And then we also have some Neapolitan. I'm not a big fan of the Neapolitan. If I could go back and do it over, I might not use any Neo because they're just so sloppy. But we have very few hip problems in our dogs, maybe 5%, but every single one of them is related to the Neapolitan.
Okay.
So if I would never use Neo, I probably would have been able to avoid that completely.
That's cool.
But, and even though we have 4 breeds, it's not 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%. It's truth of it is we bred to the Pit Bull, to the Tosa. We bred Pit Bulls to the English. We bred Pit Bulls to a Neo Pit Cross. And by the time we're all said and done, most of our dogs, the American Sentinels, are generally speaking anywhere from 50 to most of them are actually 50% is going to be kind of low. Most of our dogs are going to be running around 60 to 80%. We have 2 dogs here that are actually as high as 90% Pit Bull. And somebody might say, well, how did you get only 10% of those other 3 breeds? Well, remember, we've been doing this for 25 years. So we've got about 7 or 8 generations just on my own yard. And we started off with one dog that was actually one of the dogs that we started with was 5 generations deep. So we have actually these dogs are about 12 generations deep.
Wow.
So but when you take them back to the Pit Bull, the first one's 50-50, the next one's 75%. You go back another time after that and you're up to 87.5%. So
now on the percentage stuff. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, but the percentage really ultimately doesn't matter. What we're doing is we're selecting for traits.
Never mind.
I'm looking for the traits of the dog. There's basically 2 things that I want, or a couple things that I want from the Mastiff. I want some size. I want some durability. I want power. And I want loyalty. And by loyalty, a lot of people think the Pit Bull's a loyal dog because they really love their family, which is true. But a lot of times they also love other people. And to me, a good guard dog is kind of like a good woman. They're friendly, but they're not too friendly. Not to strangers anyway.
Yes, sir.
And so I like that loyalty aspect of the Mastiff where they kind of have that family pack instinct. But if you're a stranger, we will tolerate you, but we're kind of neutral to you unless you don't act right or my family's not here. If my family's not here, you're not welcome here.
There you go.
That's what we're looking for.
Hell yeah. See, I had no idea that you had, the Mastiffs were incorporated. Well, the Neapolitan, I figured there was some Mastiff, just from the size and the looks at the couple that I've seen. But I didn't, you could tell like there was a really, really strong Pit Bull influence there. And like I said,
there's not much Mastiff. It's really not much.
Now the Tosa, that's a breed I've always been interested in, but just like there were so few of them that I knew about that were around. What do you got? What kind of rundown do you got on the Tosa as far as the overall breed?
I think there are some out there that are pretty good. Overall, I think the breed is overrated and overhyped.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few breeds that I think are overrated and overhyped. I think the Kangaus and the Alibis and the Bully Kudas and a lot of these dogs from India and Pakistan and stuff like that. The Caucasian or Charkas. I'm just not a big fan of these breeds where it's almost like you see dog mythology about them. You always hear about these super hard bites and these PSI readings and or PSI, where they're doing pound per square inch on these hard bites and whatnot. And honestly, as a person who's done decoy work for so long, I can tell you, you can take those dog bite statistics and pretty much throw them out the window.
Yep.
Because it depends on why the dog's biting. Is he biting out of prey? Is he biting out of defense? Was it in the back of the mouth where the molars and the pressure are, or was it in the front of the mouth where the incisors and there's no pressure? A bite is not a bite. It really depends on where it's in the mouth and why they're biting. I mean, a dog can pick up an egg without cracking it, or it can bust a turtle shell. So, depending on why it's doing it. So, take those kind of things as media hype. Somebody's trying to just make a YouTube and slap some drama on it, get some views.
Yeah, I've looked at some of those statistics, and of course, I've never been able to do any comparisons as far as in the field. I've caught a couple of dogs. 2006 to 2010, maybe 12, did a good bit of weight pulling and a little bit of protection work. Not myself, but I was I decoyed one evening. Basically what I was doing was a trainer as far as physical training for the dogs.
Sure.
Just beefing them up, running them, working them out. And one of the women there had a Yog Terrier, a little Jag, and wanted it to be a protection dog. And I told her, I was like, because I've raised Yog Terriers for decades. I said, I wouldn't do that, Well, anyway, she did. And you were talking about that dual purpose stuff. Let me tell you, that little Jag can bite really hard too. So those statistics, and I've had some bigger dogs bite me, and I mean just body slam me. But I had a Rottweiler. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, a lot of times bigger dogs have power, but they don't always have the bite. Some of them do, some of them don't. Really depends on if they want to be there.
That's right. I caught a Dutch Shepherd, and the dog had a really good bite on him. But then I wound up catching this XXL Camelot dog, or I think that's what it was. I mean, it was a huge dog, 130 pounds. And when I tell you this dog hit, but he didn't have the bite that Dutch did, but he had so much force coming with him physically that it just put me on the ground.
Yeah.
But like you said, like the difference in the bite, it was a big difference. But the little Jag, back to that, the dual purpose thing didn't work out very well because about 6 months later, they had a sleeve on the outside of their house that you had to put the sleeve on to open the door to catch the dog so you could put him in the crate. Yeah. It was an absolute mess.
Yeah.
But but those statistics, as far as your statistics and what you know from catching dogs, from doing bite work, what's the hardest mouth?
I can't say that there's one that's the hardest mouth. You got to look at dog to dog.
Mm-hmm.
You can have, to me, breeds of dogs are kind of like races of people. There's really not as much difference as people want to think there is.
Yeah.
It's really going to come down to the individual that you're testing. You can find good and bad in every breed, and it's the same. So that's my opinion. And you just have to find the ones that work and separate the best from the rest. And that's the ones you want to work with. And then that's when genetics comes into play. Once you've made your selections, then your genetics is going to matter. But if you can't even separate the best from the rest, then like I said, it doesn't matter how good you are at genetics. You'll just never really get anywhere.
I got you.
Evolution doesn't look at a pedigree. Mm-hmm. I'm a creation myself, but at the same time, there still are natural processes even today. You can go out and look at a herd of gazelle running from the cheetah and the leopards and all that stuff. And nature doesn't say, well, it's not your fault that you broke your leg. I mean, you stepped in a hole and no gazelle would have known that hole was there.
Yeah.
And you broke your leg. But you know what? Nature doesn't care. It's just, you got to run on 3 legs or you're going to die. And at the end of the day, Bert Sorrells, you said something about making excuses. Bert Sorrells mentioned to me very early in my career of breeding dogs. He said, do you know the difference between excuses and allowances? He said, it's okay to make allowances, but never make excuses. What's the difference? And I didn't really know what he was getting at. So I said, well, what do you mean? And he replied, well, allowances are made for winners and excuses are made for losers. So you can make allowances for things you don't like if the dog works.
Yeah.
Because there's something in that dog that you didn't see that's overcoming that thing that you do see. So let's say, for example, a dog has a broken leg, and let's just say it's a deformed leg. Let's make it really clear for the listeners to understand. Let's just say a dog has a deformed leg, but that dog runs faster, jumps higher, and out-hunts any other dog in the arena. Well, we can all see the deformed leg, but what we don't always see is the respiratory system, the circulatory system, the determination, the commitment, the pain tolerance. There's other things that are in that animal that are allowing that dog to outperform the others. So we can allow things that we don't like if those dogs win, but we never make excuses for losers. Now, this is, of course, assuming that you did your part. So what I mean by that is if a person does something stupid, like let's say a dog has parvo and it's half sick and they take the dog hunting. Well, that's on the owner. Don't take a dog hunting that's not ready to go.
Yes,
all right. So, but if you do your part and that dog does not perform, then no matter how much you like it, don't make excuses for it.
Yep. Yeah, I definitely agree on that. And putting that into perspective there for me, or put it into perspective, what you said, Bert told you, the excuses and the allowances. I've never heard that part. Never really looked at it quite like that. But now that you say that, there's been so many times that I've looked at stuff and I'm like, well, this dog has all these attributes that I really like. Well, maybe I don't like this 1 or 2 things about it, but the dog performs at a much higher level. It's a better dog overall for what I'm doing. So I allow it where normally I would be against it, but because of the performance, I allow it. I never looked at it like that. And then there have been times where I've made excuses and I'm like, well, it's still a little young, or, well, it's this or that, or it's because of this or that. And the whole time it's just because I'm making excuses.
Sure. Well, we all like dogs that work and we all like dogs that look good. But I can tell you from personal experience, I had a dog named Tiggy that worked like a beast. You can go find her on my YouTube channel if you want to. She was a great, great worker, but she was not a very good looker. That dog was kind of ugly. And after having her, I thought to myself, when people would say, why do you have that dog? She's kind of ugly. I said, she'll work as hard or better than 90% of the dogs out here. The dog's a freaking worker. And what I thought to myself is, anytime you go and visit an experienced dog man's yard that likes working dogs, and he's got an ugly dog, there's only one reason he's keeping it. There's only one reason he's keeping it. Because a man that likes working dogs, is whether he'll admit it or not, everybody likes a good-looking dog. So if he's keeping an ugly dog, it's because that dog has earned its place.
Without a doubt. Yeah, because like you said, everybody wants that good looker. Without a doubt.
Right.
So on the part like you're talking about with just having an eye and being able to tell, that's where you create your foundation part. But what about those people out there that don't know what to look for yet?
Well, in my opinion, what they really need to do is and this is difficult, especially with the younger generation that doesn't have the same. I'm not trying to rain on anybody's parade, but I'm assuming you're old enough that you would probably agree with me. The younger generation, generally speaking, doesn't have the same work ethic as the older generation. Go back and look at the people in the 1950s. And there was not. Go to look at a beach. You might have seen these old photos from the 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, and maybe even the 1970s, where pretty much 90+% of the people on the beach wore a size 32 pant if they were a man. I mean, they were just didn't see overweight people.
That's right.
Well, today it's fast food generation. It's charity. Teachers today, they get in trouble if the students don't perform. Well, when I was in school, the kids got in trouble if they didn't perform. And everything's been kind of watered down. But if you can if there is a young person out there that really wants to really get good at it, and they're willing to work, and there are some out there that are willing to work, they're just not the norm anymore. But if one of your listeners says, you know what, I'm dedicated, I'm willing to work, what they really need to do is they need to find a mentor that's been in this game that has that ability that they don't have. And I've always felt like my teachers are people that can either do or explain, but preferably both, what I cannot do or explain. And that's the people you learn from. If you're learning how to weld, you don't go talk to some expert that's never welded. You can find somebody that's really can do it and explain it. And I say expert sarcastically that first time.
That's right.
Nowadays, everybody wants to give advice and they've never done it. So, yes, you can read a book, and yes, you can kind of understand theory, but if you haven't done it, the proof is in the pudding, is what they used to say. And
yes, sir.
Yep, you go bump elbows with people that can do what you want to do. If they can read a dog, I think some of it can be learned, but I also think some of it's just maybe the way we're born. For example, I can tell you, when I was second grade, I was diagnosed with dyslexia. I'm just not good at memorizing words. I'm not good at spelling words. Don't give me a spelling test and expect me to do very well.
Yes, sir.
But at the same time, I remember when I was in high school, I was called into the office for cheating on a test because I got 100% on it. And they were like, and you didn't show your work. And I said, well, I did it. Didn't cheat. I did do it. And they were like, well, here's the test again. Do it again. This one's modified. It's not the same one. Well, I did it. I didn't show my work again. I'm like, holy cow, you did this in your head? You can't do this in your head. And I'm like, well, you can't do it in your head, but I can. My point is, we have different skills.
Yes.
So I was good at math and I was good at science, but don't give me an English test because I just can't spell worth a toot. But thank God now they have spell check,
There you go.
So,
and that's the thing, like you said, everybody's different skill sets.
Yeah, some of it we can learn, but some of it I think is a gift. And sometimes I kick myself in the butt for not following my own instincts. I still have, I would call mentors and people that I've looked up to, and I sometimes have listened to their advice instead of my own. And a lot of times I kick myself in the butt for listening to their advice because sometimes it works out, but sometimes it doesn't. And I think it's important that we follow our own instincts. Our instincts are usually, for me, pretty accurate. Now, somebody else might have bad instincts, but I think a lot of times our instincts tell us the truth. Good intuition.
Yeah. I'm digging that part for sure, because and there have been times where I'm like you, same thing like you said, like I had somebody tell me that I looked up to, and I'm like, man, I just don't feel like that's going to be right or that it's going to work for me, and I should have just listened to myself, and at the same, but that's also after I had been involved in doing this stuff for quite a few years. It wasn't, just the first time I'd done it, of course, because I don't want to give any listeners out there that's just starting out. I don't want to sound contradictory when I'm saying, hey, follow your instincts, follow your gut, but you got to listen to a mentor. What we're telling you is find a mentor. Yes, find a mentor and learn some stuff, and then you'll progress.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you've ever seen that movie Cape Fear with Robert De Niro.
Yeah.
In the very beginning of the movie, he's walking out of the prison, and they say, hey, Max, what, don't you want your books? He said, I already read them. Well, I've always remembered that line, because what we should do when we bump elbows with our mentors I don't go to my mentor to tell them they're wrong. I go to my mentor, I shut my mouth, listen to what they have to say, and then I leave. And I hold on to what is good and I discard what is not. And slowly over time, by adding tools to my toolbox. And as I add more and more tools, my instincts become better because I know when to grab a screwdriver, when to grab a Phillips head, and when to grab a star, or whatever you want to call them, star heads or whatever.
That's
right. They all might look like a basic screw, but they're a little bit different. Or when to grab a 1/4-inch driver versus a 1/2-inch driver, and battery power tool, because I don't want to bust the lug nuts, things like that. So we might have the right instinct, but experience still comes into play, because if you grab one that's too strong, you might bust something.
That's right. Now,
if you're using, I'm talking about power tools here, but
now with this setup, you said that you've been a teacher, you taught for 25 years.
Yes, sir. Well, I taught 25 years in the high school and basic, like a junior college level.
Okay.
But then when I was in college myself, I also taught 2 years, and when I was working on my master's degree.
Okay, I got you. I was just curious about that part. Didn't have to go. We don't have to go into any further depth on that. I was just making sure I'd heard you correctly on that. That's pretty cool there. I have a lot of respect for teachers. I know I gave all my teachers a hard time through school, and I look back on it now and I'm like, teachers don't get paid enough at all to put up with what they had to put up with.
Mm-mm.
Well, the one thing I would say that I kind of take issue with is it used to be better. The last 8 to 10 years I taught were getting pretty, but I would say really not the last 10, probably the last 4 to 6 years we're getting pretty rough, because now the last 4 to 6 years they really start putting on our teachers if the students didn't perform. And with the cell phone technology, people are taking cell phones into their class or taking computers in their class, and they get distracted. And I don't want to run our podcast and talk about education too much,
that's fine.
But the distractions on the students end up it keeps the kids from paying attention in class. And you can tell them to not have their phone, but they're good about sneaking a peek. And and then when they take the test, they're like, the teacher never taught that. And I'm like, actually, I taught it 3 times, but you were on your cell phone every single time. So it was time for me to retire and move on, because they say, well, if you're a good teacher, you can perform, and they talked about performance-based pay, and that works good for private schools where they can select their students, and if the kid's not going to be dedicated, they can kick them out and send them to the public school. But for the public school, that just doesn't work. You have to. It's like teaching people to play football, but you don't have any talent. It's nice. Yes, you can have performance-based play when you get to select your students, or I can have performance-based pay on my dog breeding, because I get to select my gene pool. I get to decide whether I get this dog or not. It's up to me to choose this dog or not. But in education, you don't get to choose your students. You got to teach what comes, everybody that comes, and you want to do the best job you can. But some parents want their kids to learn, and some parents want their kids to be babysat so they can just go on and do their thing. And that's just the way it is today. A lot of parents are using drugs these days. Drugs are everywhere. But it's time for me to move on and say I made my contribution. Out of the 25 years I taught, I certainly made good contributions for at least 20, and probably 22, 23. The last few years, though, they were getting pretty tough.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's good. And like I said,
kind of a different call.
So it was time to move on. So, all right. So now you've done the teaching all these other people. Now it's time for you to teach us a little bit of stuff. All right.
Well,
so let's get into this. These breeds that you got, and then how you came up with them. Let's go into some line breeding, some inbreeding. Just lay it on us. Whatever you want to talk about.
All right. Well, when I first wanted to create the American Sentinel concept, I didn't really have the name American Sentinel. It was just called a Bandog, which was a Mastiff Pit Bull hybrid. And the purpose, in my opinion, was to basically take a pit bull and add size and protection instinct. That's basically what I'm talking about. Because with size, you're going to get power and durability as well, and maybe a little bit of intimidation as well. But you have to be careful about too much Mastiff, because Mastiff has a lot of traits I don't like. They shed, they're sloppy, They have health problems. They don't have stamina. They don't have heat tolerance. And so these are all things that I don't want to come in and contaminate the pit bull, because that would make the pit bull a lesser dog. I'm not trying to produce a lesser dog. I'm trying to produce a greater dog. And that's pretty tough when you're dealing with a pit bull, because a pit bull is if you have a good quality a good quality line, not line bred, but a good quality line dog, then in my opinion, there's two breeds that are perfected, and that is the American Pit Bull Terrier and the Greyhound. And that's because for centuries, there's been money behind those dogs. They either worked or they didn't, and nobody wanted to feed something that was going to lose them money. And I know that sounds terrible and cruel, but that's just the way it was before I was born. So I had nothing to do with it. You had nothing to do with it. But
that's right.
When it comes to survival and money, the performance is there or it's not. And you can train it and you can make it the best it can be, but you still have to measure. And at the measurement, when it comes time to measure, those two breeds are perfected. They're so determined that, a Greyhound, I may be wrong about this now because I learned this like 30 years ago, but and so it could be changed, but a Greyhound set the record for the longest jump ever made, but it broke its leg when it landed.
Damn.
Because they were committed just to really move a light bone and a lot of muscle mass. And the pit bull, I mean, they have gone in competition for hours and hours and hours, and scratches when a dog tries to go across to get its opponent, and they're committed to the death, to keep, if you have what's called a dead game dog. Now that may not be very normal. A lot of people want to think that they're all that way. That's not true. Very few of them are that way, but when you find one, a pit bull or a bulldog, what they used to call it, just a bulldog.
Yeah.
It's a mascot for universities and high schools and all across the United States because it's a symbol of determination and strength.
Yeah.
And even if you don't like what the dog does, determination and strength are two attributes that we all respect, being determined and being strong. And so I wanted to improve that. Well, when I was at the University of Illinois, believe it or not, in the Department of Animal Sciences, they actually had in the ag library a book called The World of Fighting Dogs, written by Carl Semenczyk. In that book, there was a picture and some chapter about the Bandog, and there was some photos of John Swinford's dogs, Bantu, and a few other of the other Swinford Bandogs. And that influenced me because I thought, I like these dogs. These kind of look like they represent what I have envisioned in my mind. And so for a while we were breeding Bandogs, but over time, this is some good advice for your listeners, what I'm fixing to say.
Okay.
And that is one of the things that has separated my program from other programs, because there's been a lot of Bandog breeders that come and go.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants to be a chief. Nobody wants to be an Indian. And so if you look at all these Bandog programs that have come and gone, you see these people pop up and they put their last name in front of it. So let's just say, like my last name is Robinson. So I call him Robinson Bandog. Well, let's just say I made a great animal, right? And you wanted to get one. Well, you'll never be successful as a breeder because if somebody wants to buy a Robinson Bandog, you're going to buy it from me, not you. So that just eliminates partnership. So I said, I'm not going to make that mistake. So if you want to produce something and have it endure, we need to be humble. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, what am I going to name our dogs? And I said, well, the breed originates in America. And what is it? It's a sentinel, which means guardian. A lot of people say centennial. It's not 100 years. It's a sentinel, which means guardian. Mm-hmm. Sentinel. And so I said, we're going to call it American Sentinel. And by not naming it after myself, we got 4 large programs out there that are breeding dogs. And that's critical when it comes to creating a team. And nobody today that I know of in the United States can keep 100 dogs. I know one guy's got 290 dogs, but he's in Mexico.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I can keep about 30. I have another friend that keeps about 15, another friend that keeps about 15, another guy that keeps about 5 or 6. And so by the time you get all these together, united, we have 50 or 60 dogs. Mm-hmm. When it's all said and done. And that's what you need if you really want to evolve a line or a program. It takes a population.
Yes.
To do it with 2 or 3 dogs. It really takes a population. So in this day and time, it's tough, especially if you want to be the chief and your friend wants to be the chief. You can't have 2 cooks in the kitchen because it ruins the stew.
That's without a doubt. You can, if you don't have anybody to hand these dogs to work them and to give them, because it's hard for one man to work 30 dogs. Even if you do it full time, I'm sure it's a lot of work. We have a large yard ourselves. We have a program, but it's just for cur dogs and stuff like that. We have several different breeds, but at the same time, there's Nate's here all the time. I'm here. There's 3 or 4 of us, and then we got Rodney, and we're all interacting and networking together. We have guys in other states that we send puppies to and back and forth and all that. I couldn't imagine trying to do that by yourself.
Right. So, you can be the chief of your yard, but you let that partner that you're working with be the chief of his yard.
Yeah.
You let that other guy be the chief of his yard, but yet you still have a common denominator. And there, it's almost like there's no chief. Mm-hmm. There, the common denominator, you're just equal team players. And by having equal team players, then you get camaraderie, you get mutual respect, you have humility, and then nobody's getting dismissed. Like this guy, Ryan Keaton and Keaton Temple, they breed American Sentinels, mm-hmm. and they do a darn good job. Keaton Temple produces great hog dogs. Ryan Keaton's out there doing protection work. I do more protection work than Keaton, but Keaton's doing more hog hunting. So we're using the same line of dogs, but we're testing them in different venues. And since we're not dual purposing dogs, we're benefiting each other, because I'm testing the same blood for protection work. He's testing that same blood for hog hunting, but it's not the same dog. So mm-hmm. no dog is dual purpose. Each dog has a specific task.
Yeah. And that when I first talked to Keaton about him, that's what he was telling me. And I told him then, I said, I really like the way that's set up, because you have the same dogs, but they're not being used for the same thing. So that way each dog gets to have its full potential at what they're good at. We can test the line in both venues and test the dog in one venue. Exactly. And I've sent Keaton a dog here and there, just hunting dogs and stuff, and he sent me a few. And he's a hell of a dog, man, if you ask me.
Yeah, he's a committed hog hunter for sure. I've got some pretty cool videos, and you probably seen some of them as well. But,
oh yeah.
But anyway, you probably have me on here to talk genetics, and I've barely done it.
Yeah. So talk about it.
Let me jump into it. So we got we did our crosses, and a lot of times that F1 cross, and the F1, the word F, or the letter F, stands for the word filial, F-I-L-I-A-L. Mm-hmm. Filial means it's that offspring. It means offspring. So you have your foundation breed, and this could be for me, for the Bandog, it may have been the game bred American Pit Bull Terrier and an English Mastiff. But let's say you have a hog hunter or somebody that wants to make a bay dog. Well, maybe they have plot hounds, and maybe they have blackmouth cur, whatever it is that they're using, mm-hmm. and they want to cross it. Well, when they cross that too, the offspring are going to be what's called an F1, filial, first generation offspring. Well, that first generation offspring a lot of times will be very consistent, and you get it's like a hybrid vigor. So they tend to be very healthy, which means hybrid vigor is basically means you have what's called heterosis. Heterosis means heterozygous. And if a person doesn't know what heterozygous is, let's just look at the word homo and hetero. Mm-hmm. Homo means the same, and hetero means different. And zygous refers to what's called a zygote. A zygote is a fertilized egg, which means a sperm and an egg. So heterozygous means the sperm and the egg were different when they made that zygote a certain trait. And heterosis means they were different for many traits. So homozygous is when they were the same for a trait. The sperm and the egg were the same when they made the zygote for a trait. And so the opposite of heterosis would be basically inbreeding. And so you have heterozygosity, and heterozygosity and heterosis is basically the same thing. So you have heterozygous and heterozygosity. Heterozygous means different for one trait. Heterozygosity means different for many traits, which is the same as heterosis. Then you have inbreeding, which increases homozygosity for many traits. And when you inbreed repeatedly over and over and over again, you will start getting homozygosity for detrimental alleles. And when you get inbreeding, or when you get homozygosity for detrimental alleles, you'll start getting a reduction in litter size. So instead of having 8 or 10 puppies in the litter, or 12 puppies in the litter, you might get litters that are only having 1 or 2 puppies, or maybe even sterile, not having any puppies at all. When you get to that point, you went too far with your inbreeding, and you need to back up a generation and do an outcross to get rid of that blood that's too tight. Now, sometimes you can make it past that. That's, for example, it depends on the population that you're dealing with and the species that you're dealing with. If you're dealing with chickens can have 200 eggs in a clutch. Dogs don't have 200 babies in a litter. Dogs have 10, basically. Sometimes it might be 5, sometimes it might be 10. I got a female out there right now. I'm expecting her to have 14 puppies. She's huge.
Wow.
I wouldn't be surprised if she had 16. We had a litter one time that had 16 puppies. It was the most I've ever had. But we've also had bitches that were sterile, that were really, really inbred on a dog that was already inbred. It ended up producing the dog that was sterile. And that was very disappointing because that dog was awesome, but she never had a pup. And generally speaking, you can line breed on a male. If you have a male dog, he can be tighter bred and still produce than if you have a female, usually. Usually 75% is not a problem for a female, but 87.5% might be a problem for a female. So let's say, for example, you bred 2 dogs that were unrelated. Let's call it dog A and dog B.
Mm-hmm.
Then you get puppy that's AB. Well, you take that puppy that's AB and you take it back to A. Now you have 75% A and only 25% B in the next generation. That would still work probably if you have a healthy dog for a male or a female. But if you take it back to the A again, so now you're at 87.5% A and only 12.5% B because you bred father to daughter, then father back to granddaughter, then father back to great granddaughter. That's a lot of tight breeding. And you might get a male that can still produce, but a female's probably going to be sterile. And somebody might say, why would it be different for males and females? Well, a male has a 15-minute contribution. A female has 2 months of pregnancy and at least a month of whelping. And so there's a lot more things that can go wrong in a female than there are in a male. A male only has to produce an egg. A male only has to produce a sperm. A female has to produce an egg and then has to nurture that baby that after it attaches to the placenta and into the uterus and then get nourishment. And then after it grows for 2 months, 63 days, then it has to deliver it. Then it has to have maternal instinct, and then it has to produce the milk. Then not get mastitis. It needs to have good disease resistance. It needs to have good social instincts. Not going to be cannibalistic and eat the puppies. All kinds of things can go wrong with the female, but the male only has a 15-minute contribution.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times you can get a little tighter inbred male than you can with a female.
I got you.
Without having a problem.
I want to ask you a question. Someone that we know, they made a post the other day, and they were asking about the difference, like a father-daughter breeding versus a mother-son breeding. What's the difference in that, and what would you recommend?
Recommend using whichever was better, because the difference between a father-daughter and a mother-son is so small that it's really going to come down to the dogs being used. If you have a better combination of one versus the other, do the one that's got the better dogs.
Okay.
All right. But now, genetically speaking, there's 2 types of DNA that a dog, actually there's 3, but the 2 that are always talked about is nuclear DNA and then mitochondrial DNA. Mm-hmm. But then there's also ribosomal, but ribosomal is not going to be as critical. Nuclear DNA is basically what controls our traits. And the difference between a father-daughter versus a mother-son in terms of nuclear DNA is basically no different. All right. half a dozen in one hand, 6 in the other. But the mitochondrial DNA is almost exclusively from the mother. So, in other words, the mitochondria may affect metabolism. So, if you're dealing with a metabolic problem, then you don't want to inbreed on that mother, because that mitochondrial problem is coming from the mother. Something like 99.999% of the mitochondrial DNA is from the mother. It's very, very, very rare, if ever, that it comes from the father.
That's pretty cool.
Sperm have mitochondria in it, but the sperm mitochondria doesn't have DNA in most cases, and it doesn't get passed into, or it doesn't have DNA that gets passed into the zygote. So, because the sperm when the sperm penetrates, the whole sperm doesn't go in the egg.
Yes.
The sperm has what's called a cap on it, called the acrosome, and that acrosome dissolves when it hits that egg, and then the DNA gets like injected into the egg, and so the sperm is only contributing mitochondrial DNA. It's not. The sperm is only contributing nuclear DNA. It's not contributing mitochondrial. Yeah, it's not contributing mitochondrial.
Okay.
My apologies when we're talking about this stuff and I'm sitting here drinking a glass of tea.
No,
I start thinking about the next thing I'm going to say.
No, and I'm sorry I got you off on that part, because, like I said, it was just it was a question, and there was a lot of comments on it, and I was really, I guess you'd say, I was kind of proud to see where most of the, I'm going to say most, the bigger majority of people that have been breeding and raising dogs, their recommendation was for that guy to just talk to somebody who's been raising game dogs or look at some of the old game dog stuff. They said that's where the best breedings were. I was like, well, yeah, there's a lot of that went on.
Well, you're going to see a lot more father. You're going to see more father daughter than you do mother son, but it's not because one's better. It's not because one's better than the other. Okay. It's because you can breed a male more often.
Yes.
Than you can a female, and since you can breed a male more often, males tend to be, like, for example, if you go to a breeder's yard, we have a lot of males on our yard. Our yard is about 50-50, or at least 60-40, which means at least 40% males and 60% females. But you go to some yards and it might be 20% males and 80% females, because people that are trying to breed know that those 20% of males can service their whole yard. And so with that being the case, if they have fewer males than they do females, well, obviously they're going to do more father-daughters because they have fewer males to choose from and a whole bunch of females. So if you only have 2 males and you have 10 females, or 2 males and 8 females, then let's say that you got some females that are off of those 2 males. Well, when you get to breed them, you have a 50% choice between male that's the father and male that's not the father. So they're going to be using a lot more father. Generally speaking, you see more father-daughter, but the mother-son works just as good. And in fact, if you do a mother-son, the son is going to have the same mitochondrial DNA as the mother because he got it from his mother, and the offspring is going to have the same mitochondria from the mother. So if you really like that dog's metabolism, that might be a good thing.
Okay.
Look at the mother's metabolism. If she's got a good metabolism and you like her stamina,
that's it. Okay.
That may come into play, because mitochondria, I don't know if you know this or not, maybe I should specify this. Mitochondria convert glucose into ATP, and ATP is the energy. It's called adenosine triphosphate. That's the energy source that we actually use. We don't use, a lot of people think that we use glucose for energy. We really don't. The mitochondria convert glucose into ATP, and ATP is what we use. And so the faster they convert and produce that ATP, the more efficient that metabolism is going to be. So somebody that has a really fast metabolism has a really good ability to keep that ATP in supply, and without having to go into anaerobics. Anaerobics is the metabolism of energy without oxygen. Aerobics is the metabolism of energy with oxygen.
10-4. That's all I got to say about that. I was like, okay. No, I mean, it's I can remember reading some of this stuff here and there, but it's like, dude, I was like, there's so much going on. This, and with you going over it and explaining a lot of it, I can put a lot more of it together. I'm glad we're doing this. That's for sure. So continue on, teacher man.
All right.
We are learning.
a lot of times when I talk about genetics, it's almost difficult unless the audience knows certain terms.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for example, if I say a genome and a person doesn't know what a genome is, then anything I say about genome is like I might as well be speaking Chinese. So
Mm-hmm.
we need to learn some basic terms. And so let's look at a couple of basic terms here real quick. And let's think about the word gene pool. Most people know what the word gene pool is. It's kind of like just the entire population and all the genes that exist in the population. That's what's called a gene pool. And so let's make a comparison of that to something else that everybody understands. And that's a library. Think about a library. When you walk into the library, you see all these books. They got all kinds of words in it. And every book's got chapters in it. And every chapter has pages. And every page has sentences. All right. Well, that's kind of like a gene pool. A gene pool is, we all have all these genes out there. Well, next, let's use the most popular book that's ever been written. And that's going to be the Bible. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm not asking people if they believe. If they believe, that's cool. If they don't believe, that's fine too. That's their choice. But regardless, everybody knows whether they believe it or not. They know Bibles exist. And they know Bibles come in different translations. You can find the King James Version, the New King James Version, the English Version, the New International Version, the ESV. There's all these different versions of the Bible. And so that is going to be kind of like a population. We have this subset of individuals that are sharing a similar conversation. So that's going to be kind of like a breed. You have this subset, like gene pool is going to be all the dogs that exist, and then you have a breed. Well, that breed has its own gene pool as well, but the gene pool in that breed has what's called a higher degree of homozygosity because they're carrying similar topics. They're carrying similar traits. All Dalmatians are white with black spots because in that segment of books, no matter which dog you pick, it's going to have those same topics being discussed. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have the Bible. Well, the Bible has chapters in it. And so the chapters are going to be kind of like what's called the chromosome. Those books, each individual has a set of DNA that they got from their parents. But for every set of DNA, they've got, for example, humans have 46 chromosomes. They got 23 from their mother and 23 from their father. Well, think about that as kind of like chapters in the book. Your dad gave you a handbook and said, here's your handbook of life. And in here, we're going to have genetic codes. And these codes are going to tell you how to digest food. They're going to give you your desires. They're going to give you your instincts. They're going to tell you how to grow, how to do things that you don't even think about. Like nobody thinks about their heartbeat. It just does it automatically in the instructions that we were given from our father.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the mother gave us another set of instructions. So we have our gene pool, but then we also have the genome. The genome, let's look at that word. It's spelled Genome. So I like to break that word down into gene, which means the genes, and then I look at the O, and that stands for whole, and then me. Gene-o-me. It's the genes that make the whole me. And so that's just my set of genes. So the gene pool represents everybody, but the genome just represents one individual. So that's going to be like a book. So you have the library for everybody, but you have a book for an individual. And then in that book, you have those chapters, which is the chromosomes. All of our DNA is broken into segments. We don't just have a big camaraderie of genes. It's broken into segments. And for humans, we have 23 segments from our mother and then 23 matching segments from our father. And those chromosomes have to line up next to each other. And those are called homologous chromosomes, which means chromosome 1 from the mother lines up with chromosome 1 from the father. And then chromosome 2 from the mother lines up with chromosome 2 from the father. It does it for all 23 chromosomes. And the last chromosome is called the sex chromosome. And if it's the same, it's XX, and that's a female. And if that chromosome is different, it's XY, and it's a male. Well, that's true for dogs also. But dogs don't have 23, they have 39. So a dog has 39s from its father and 39 from its mother. And each one of those chromosomes line up. And each one of those chromosomes like a chapter in a book has a page number. There's a chromosome might have, let's say, 100 pages. It might have 100 what's called loci, LOCI. That's a location for a trait. So every trait, whether it's talking about dog color or coat color, actually has 4 or 5 different loci. And so it's what's called a polygenic trait. For example, let me think of you've seen people with freckles and people without freckles. That's controlled by a single loci. There's one gene that determines whether you have freckles or not. Just one gene. You either have it or you don't. So it's on or it's off. It's just that simple because it's controlled by one gene. And that's called a single loci, or also called monogenic. Mono means one and genic means gene. Well, some traits like coat color are what's called polygenic. Now it's a lot of genes that control that color. 4 or 5 different genes control that color. Well, that might sound like there's only 4 or 5 different combinations, but it's not. It's way more than that. Because imagine, for example, that you had a light bulb in your house, and you might think, well, it's either on or it's off. Well, that would be true if it was one gene, but it's not. In your house, you have the bulb. It could be good or it could be bad. Maybe that bulb is blown, or maybe the switch is broke, or maybe the circuit breaker's out, or maybe the main breaker outside is out, or maybe you didn't pay the bill and the power company turned off your power. So you could have 4 or 5 different reasons why that light bulb's not on. Or you may have a rheostat, which is a dial on how bright it is or dim it is. And so when you have multiple locations and the light bulb's on, and then you don't have, let's say, everything else in the house is off. You turned off everything in the house except for that light. You had it on, and then it goes out. You don't know if the power went out or the bulb's broke or the switch got turned off or the breaker's off or you didn't pay your bill. There's a lot of different things that could be going on. And so coat color is a pretty difficult thing to actually pinpoint, except for one reason. The only thing that makes coat color easy is we can see it with our eyeball. Well, behavior is the same way, except we can't see it.
Mm-hmm.
The only way you're going to see behavior is if you test it. And a lot of people don't test it. So behavior is a lot harder to study because every Tom, Dick, and Harry for show-bred dogs breeds for color. So a lot of people have studied color. So they're starting to get a pretty good understanding of how coat color works. You got black and yellow at one spot, and then like a black lab or a yellow lab. But if the dog is yellow, you might not see a lot of things that are going on in the other genes because some of the traits or some of the genes in other places do not affect yellow. They only affect black. So you could have different things going on in other genes and don't even know it because the dog's yellow and those genes don't come into play. But if the dog is black, now these other genes come into play. For example, you ever heard of chocolate lab? Mm-hmm. Well, a chocolate lab is actually a black lab, but the black was modified to brown because another gene in another location, that second loci or second location, it's kind of like an address, a page number, like I said, in a chapter. So you have a chapter that covers black, but then you have another chapter somewhere else that says, we're going to go back and refer to that first chapter, kind of like the way the New Testament refers to the Old Testament. So, you have another place somewhere else that turns that black into brown. And then you have another location somewhere else that turns that black into blue. And if you have both the brown and the blue, now you have what's called the tawny, which is kind of like a champagne color. Mm-hmm. So now we're talking about 4 different genes or 3 different genes just affecting black, brown, or black, yellow, and brown and blue and tawny. So we've got black, yellow, brown, blue, and tawny. 5 different colors from just 3 genes. Then you have another gene that determines whether it's going to be what's called a red nose or not. And if you have a red nose, which is a recessive combination, this is what's weird. You can have a red nose on one trait that's recessive and it's blocked by anything else on that location. But if you have that homozygous recessive combination on that location, it turns off dominant genes on the other locations. So you might have a black dog and don't even know it because you got a red nose on a recessive spot. So polygenic traits are the hardest ones to study, and they're the hardest traits to pattern. And like gameness in pit bulls, I guarantee you it's polygenic, because if it was monogenic, controlled by one gene, we'd have pure game dogs every time. By now, after 100 years of breeding, we'd be pure game dogs every time. And we don't, because there's nothing easier to reproduce than a homozygous recessive. You breed a blue dog with a blue dog, you're going to just get blue dogs. That's all you're going to get, because it's a recessive trait. And if the parent was blue, he's recessive. He doesn't have any. Recessive trait means there's nothing present to block it. A dominant trait blocks the recessive. So homozygous dominant, you get dominant. Homozygous recessive, you get recessive. But when you get heterozygous, which means one dominant and one recessive, the way you know it's dominant is because the dominant gene blocks the recessive gene. So imagine me and some 10-year-old kid are going to fight over a hamburger. Well, the 10-year-old's just not going to get the burger. I'm going to get it every time I want to. The only way that kid's going to get the burger is if I'm not in the room. That's the recessive. So if the 10-year-old gets the burger, you know I'm not there. The dominant gene is not there. So when you breed a blue to a blue, that means there's no black dominant. You just have the blue dilute. So you have black dominant, and you have dilution of black, which is recessive. Dilution of black makes blue. So if you have blue, then you have a diluted black bred with a diluted black. There is no dominant. All the puppies are coming out blue. You breed a blue to a blue, you're getting all blue. All right. I guess it would. Yeah. In theory, you could possibly get a red nose if you bred two heterozygous reds, but that's a different loci, a different thing.
Yeah.
So blacks can produce reds, but reds cannot produce.
They can't produce black.
It's weird.
So I have a question.
I hate to say some of this stuff on a audio only, because you need a visual for me to talk about it. Because we're talking about two different locations in the genome. So you have yellow, and a lot of people confuse yellow with red, because buckskin and red are kind of related, but a true red is different. It's not the same as like a buckskin, because a buckskin dog can have a black nose, but a true red will not have a black nose. A true red will have a red nose. And then you have chocolate, which is a modified black. And if you have a modified black with a chocolate nose, a chocolate dog with a chocolate nose looks like a red nose, but it's not. It's a different gene. And even though the two dogs, they're hard to tell apart. You can have a chocolate dog or a yellow dog with a chocolate nose, or a chocolate dog with a chocolate nose, or a yellow dog with a chocolate nose. And here you got a red nose. And if you saw them on two different days and they weren't side by side, you might call them both red noses. But when you saw them next to each other, you'd be able to tell the difference. The red nose is a very distinctive, brighter red.
Yeah, Nate, you said you had a question.
Yes, Mr. Robinson. Now, when you're talking about these loci, are you talking about different locations on the chromosome or different chromosomes entirely?
They can be both. So, so you have your library, then you got your book, and then you got your chapters, and then you got the page numbers, and then you have your loci, which is like word, the actual word. Well, when you have a different loci, it can be in the same chapter, which means same chromosome, or it could be on a different chapter or different chromosome. So some of these color traits are on different chromosomes, and sometimes are on the same chromosome.
I got you.
Polygenic traits you can have a trait. For example, the most polygenic trait that I can think of off the top of my head is body weight, because your body weight is controlled by so many factors, not only genetic, but also environmental. But let's just look at the genetic one. Well, what's your bone density? How much growth hormone do you have? How long did you have that growth hormone? Did it turn? So what? Not only what level, but if it was high, how long was it high for? Was it high for 1 year, or did you grow for 4 years in a row? And then not only growth hormone, but muscle mass. And then, so you got bone, you got muscle, you got growth hormone, and then body fat. And then you have metabolism. And then you have these genes that aren't necessarily size, but they influence your size because it's your desire to eat. How much do you like to eat? And how much do you like to exercise? And what's your metabolism? Are you lazy? Slowly, and then what are your preferences? Do you really like sugar, or do you like fat, or do you like protein? Because we all have different preferences. And so all of these different things come into play on polygenic traits, and they make a net influence. Do you have a long torso and short legs, or do you have long legs and short torso, or do you have long legs and large torso? So as you start getting more and more of these traits that affect size and slow down metabolism and increase your body muscle mass and increase your bone density and increase your desire to eat, next thing you know, you got 1,000-pound men.
Okay.
That's pretty.
You know, I'm curious I think it would not be difficult to produce humans that are 8 feet tall consistently, because all you have to do is cull the herd. Every man under 7 foot tall doesn't get to breed, and every woman under 6'6" doesn't get to breed. And right off the bat, you've just eliminated 95% of the population, or 98% of the population, and that last 2% is going to carry a lot of those genes that produce tall people. And then in the next generation, you're going to just look for those extremes. You breed extreme to extreme to extreme, and slowly over time, you produce greater extremes. Because one person might be tall because they had a high growth hormone. Another person might be tall because he had a long torso. Another person might be tall because he had long legs. And slowly over time, you put these traits together, and next thing you know, you got these growth hormones, tall, long torso, long legs, and you get these giants like Andre the Giant, you know,
like
or whatever.
We had like I said, we raised the Yog Terriers for a long time, and people thought they were a different breed. They were like, well, how do they look like them, act like them, have every attribute except their size? I was like, well, because I bred the freaks to the freaks. They're like, I don't understand. Right. I was like, I'm consistently, after, I think it took right around 8 or 9 years, but it was consistently 35 to 40 pound Yog Terriers, which that's way out of the standard. That's double, you know, and they were doing really good. But like you said, I think you could do anything like that if it's feasible. Like you said, cull the herd.
Yeah, and I hope it doesn't happen with people, because I'm only 6 foot.
Yeah, me and you both. I think I'm
5'10".
I was thinking to say, I think, well, it depends on which liquor store I'm leaving in a hurry. I'm between 5'9" and 5'11". No, I honestly, I try to tell everybody I'm 6 foot even, but I'm like 5'11".
Yeah, I used to be 6 foot. Now that I'm 55, I'm like 5'11 and a half. I'm shrinking.
Oh man, don't tell me that. I just keep getting fatter, and I think it's just gravity's pulling me down. It's all this weight or something. I don't know. I think
we shrink when our cartilage gets compressed over time. Plus, I don't lay down and sleep enough. If I slept more, I might not shrink so fast.
I heard that.
When I'm 90, I'm 5'10".
Yeah. I bet you do stay busy doing all this stuff, man. It's wild. First off, you know, knowing all the things that you know, and as much as you studied it and all the time that you put into it, and expressing it to us and sharing it with us, like that's awesome. We appreciate that. There's a lot of people that don't want to share stuff.
Yes.
Well, I don't want to try to promote my own channel, but if you guys want to look at some genetics, I actually have a YouTube video on the basics of genetics, and I talk about comparing some of these basic terms like gene pool, genome, chromosome, trait versus allele and loci, and heterosis and heterozygosity and homozygosity, dominant, recessive, polygenic and monogenic. And I explain a lot of these things in that video. Okay. But when I get on these podcasts, which is not the first podcast I've ever done, my most important goal is to try to give your viewer or your listeners something that will help them. And I hate to say it, as much as genetics matters, I get a little bit disgusted when I see some of these people talking about genetics on these discussion forums, because 9 times out of 10, they're talking about blinker fluid because they don't know what they're talking about. And I'm like, just because you can say the word genetics doesn't mean you're a geneticist. And so I think the best thing that people can do when it comes to genetics is don't try to learn it all in one night, because you're not gonna.
Yeah. And
don't try to pretend to be an expert on a subject that you're not, because it takes time to grasp it. But I'll tell you this is the most important part, is even if you understand genetics, it doesn't matter if you don't select the right dogs, or you got to, 90% of your energy needs to be spent on selection, not genetics. It needs to be spent on selection. If you breed the best to the best, you will have 90% of the success of anybody out there just by breeding, being a objective selection of performance. That's what nature does.
Mm-hmm.
A stick bug doesn't look like a stick because Mother Nature said, "Let me see your pedigree."
That's right.
A stick bug looks like a stick because the predators saw the ones that did not perform, and they ate them and they culled them.
Yeah.
And when they were cold, the ones that looked like sticks survived. That's why they look like sticks. And so if you want to really produce dogs that perform, you have to select the ones that perform. If you do that, you're going to have 90% of the success of the best dog breeders that are out there. That last 10% comes from understanding genetics. And then that's going to take time. There's a lot of words that you need to learn. And there's the hardest things I'm going to tell you why it's not that simple. And that's because it's polygenic. Most of the traits that we desire are polygenic, and they're really hard to pattern. Now, if you're breeding for coat color, even though that's polygenic, it's pretty easy to breed for coat color because you can see it with your eye. You don't have to go out there and work that dog. And the reason why I say that, how long does it take to determine a dog's color? When it's 4 weeks old, you know what color it is as soon as you look at it. You may have never seen that dog before in your life. You walk in there and you go to pick up your puppy at 6 weeks or 8 weeks, whatever it is. When you buy that puppy, you know what color it is in 2 minutes. 1 minute, You know what color it is.
That's right.
You do not know if that dog performs in 1 minute.
Yeah.
Even if you got that dog as an adult and somebody promised you that it worked, you still don't know that it worked. You got to take that dog out on the hunt and see it work. And even on that first hunt, you might not even come across a hog. And even if you do come across a hog, maybe that hog was caught by the buddy dog that was with it, and that was the backup dog. So, like, you ever seen kids in the schoolyard fight? The first guy that starts is the one who's the leader. The second one may not even have the confidence. He's just backing up the leader. So to really know if that dog's going to hunt, you might have to hunt that dog for a whole season, maybe. And like we had one dog that literally crossed a creek that was like ice water frozen. And the dog was solo on its own, crossed it, or not a creek, but a river. And the hunters could not cross this creek. You know, if Keaton was there, he would have wanted to cross it because that's just what he is.
Yeah.
But these hunters did not cross this creek. They got back in their side by side, and they had to drive around to get to a bridge and go around the other side. It took them an hour to get to that dog. That dog, by itself, solo, had caught that hog on the throat and terminated that hog. Well, now you know you have a committed dog. But that doesn't happen every time.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty rare for a dog to catch solo. No bay dogs, no backup catch dogs. Just that one dog catching by itself. Had to work that dog and finish that hog on the throat for an hour. And that's because the hunters weren't even able to back it up. Well, now they know they got a legit dog. So if you find that really hard selection criteria to recognize your aces for what they are, that's when you want to do your line breeding and your inbreeding. And that was a word that I guess your son asked me about, line breeding and inbreeding. And I'll tell you, in the genetics world, there's no such thing as line breeding in the genetics world. Line breeding is a dog term or a chicken term or a farmer term. But in the genetics book, it's all inbreeding. It's just tight inbreeding or loose inbreeding.
Yes, sir.
But it's inbreeding. Inbreeding means you're breeding in the family. But in the dog world, people say mother, son, father, daughter, or full siblings is inbreeding. And then they say line breeding is when it's like half siblings or uncle, niece, or aunt, nephew, or cousins, second cousins, and stuff like that. But, you know, if we look at the royal family, they did inbreeding for a long time.
Yep. And
they started getting hemophilia. They started getting all kinds of, they got people that were sterile. I mean, they literally had one son that he looked like a woman, but it was not because he was a feminine person. He just was malformed. His jaw didn't develop properly. It developed real long and skinny, or real skinny, narrow, didn't have much jawbone, real skinny face, kind of feminine. He didn't have any muscle tone. And apparently he was mentally disabled, like really slow, couldn't speak till he was like 4 or 5 years old or 10 years old. Even then he had very limited speech. But because this family wanted to preserve the line, they tried to get this child to reproduce. And by literally forcing the boy to have sex, and he wasn't able to have children because he was inbred so much. And, you know, they get extra like sometimes you'll see people with an extra digit or something like that. And this was going on in the royal family. Well, they bred themselves to extinction. Well, line breeding and inbreeding doesn't work well when you have very small litters, because if you have very small litters, it's hard to cull. If you have one child a year, you can't cull it.
That's right.
But if you have 20 a year, like let's say a dog has 10 puppies twice a year, that's 20 puppies. Now you can cull it. Well, if you have a chicken that has 200 babies a year, you can cull it a lot more. So the more you can cull it, the greater you can line breed. The less you can cull it, the less you can line breed, because you don't want to cull your whole yard unless it's trash. But if you have some good dogs, and let's say, you bred, I think you catch my point.
Oh yeah, definitely.
A large population can be culled harder, and the faster they reproduce, the harder you can cull.
And that's, you know, there's a lot of guys I know that hunt that, like you, pretty much what you're saying there, they don't breed enough or have a big enough yard to have a program. You know what I mean? Like they'll have, and then they don't understand why they don't have the consistency factor, and why they only had, you know, one dog here and there that was really, really good. And then they're like, man, I only had one litter, you know, I had 6 puppies this year. Then I didn't breed the next year. And then the next year I had 4. And so you got to have enough material there to work with. Yeah.
I know one guy that tries to give people secret recipes on how to breed dogs. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
I know that, you know, people, they go back and they study these pedigrees. You can go back and look at Pat Patrick. He's a friend of mine. He gave me his ADBA Dogman Hall of Fame plaque. If you had game dogs, you know who Pat Patrick is.
Yep.
Polio, Tombstone, and all that stuff. Yep. Well, he bred Polio to his best daughters, and then he took those daughters out of that, bred them back to Polio again, so he had 3/4 Polio. And then he did the same thing with Tombstone stuff, and then he brought those lines together. And then after he produced dogs that were really good, he may have bred brother-sisters together, or half brother-sisters together. And you can do that kind of stuff. But what they don't know, because they're just looking at a pedigree and they're trying to copycat what Patrick did, is they never spoke to Patrick. Patrick will tell you, if the dog doesn't work, you ain't using it. It doesn't matter what the pedigree is like. So he may not have been what's called an active in the trenches with matching dogs or anything, but he looked at his dogs himself, and he evaluated his dogs himself for that venue. And see, some people might say, well, Lee, what's your favorite dog on your yard? Well, we do protection evaluations, and hog. If you hunt, not every hog hunts on video.
Yeah.
So you can't always prove to the world what you know about a certain dog, but you know. And if you know what that dog's capable of doing, you got to use that knowledge, because the person that's giving you advice may or may not know what you know. That's
right. That's exactly right. Because there's those special dogs. You know, you got that special sauce, like you were talking about. It's your own. I ain't gonna say it's a secret recipe, but it's what you've done that works. But it's also because of all the background. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's because of the background.
Yeah, right. It's the information, but it's not a recipe.
Yeah.
Because the information, what you have to be able to. Let's see. I made a analogy. Let's say, for example, I don't like anchovies, but if you ever had anchovies, you know how they're salty.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, they suck. Yeah.
Yeah, they're really salty.
Yes.
So let's say somebody wanted to make a pizza. Well, if somebody puts anchovies on there, and there's two cooks in the kitchen. One person puts anchovies on it, and another person puts salt on it. Now you just run the pizza because it's super salty.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, you can have two ingredients that kind of adding that same aspect. And, one person knows one thing, another person. So you got to be able to modify. I guess what I'm getting at is you got to be able to modify your recipe based on what you see. So if I have a dog, for example, a little bit nervous, a lot of people think a dog that's nervous won't work. That's not true. There are dogs that are very high drive that may be nervous, but they will work maybe in the woods, but they won't work in protection. So if I have a dog that, let's say a dog's scared of a police car or an ambulance or a fire truck. Well, when you're hunting a raccoon, that doesn't matter because there's no fire trucks in the woods. Generally speaking, that doesn't happen. But you need drive. Well, but if I was going to breed that dog, I might want to breed that trait out and get rid of that nervousness because I don't like the nervous animal. I want a dog that I can put on the front of the four-wheeler and drive through the woods, and the dog's not nervous on the front of the four-wheeler.
Okay.
So you still want to eliminate some of these traits. So you got to read the dog in front of you and try to balance out what's negative by breeding to something else that doesn't have that trait, but still is solid in all the other things.
That's where the allowances come in.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I got you now.
Never breed down. And what I mean by that is one dog might be better than the other, but you never think I'm going to fix the. What you do is you improve the good dogs. And this is what we're talking about with allowances. You can allow that dog that if it works, it's a good dog, but you still need to improve the weakness.
Yeah. And I done some breedings a while back. I did a 3-way cross, and there were people. That's what they kept asking me. They were like, "Well, why were you trying to add this to the Yog Terrier?" I was like, I wasn't trying to add anything. This other dog had certain things I liked, and so I had to pick the dogs that I wanted to work with. First off, like you said, I had to put my eyes on them and make the choice for my foundation. And then when I made the crosses, I took different breeds and put them together, but it wasn't to. Everybody kept saying, they were like, "Well, what are you adding?" I was like, "I'm not necessarily adding from this. I might be taking away from it." They're like, "Well, I don't get how that means." I was like, "Well, I mean, this dog is super, super high drive. It's bouncing off the walls. It's tenacious. It does this and does that. And I'm adding this other dog. He's a little more chilled, relaxed, and all that. So I'm not necessarily adding anything to it. I could be taking some of that down." And I was amazed at how many people didn't realize, like, you can breed down if that's what you want to do. I was like, you can take stuff away. It's not all about just adding stuff. Not every time. Yep. I mean, if you want a high performance dog, it is, like you said, you don't want to breed down for that. But there were certain things I was looking for that I liked in these couple of breeds, but I crossed them with a different breed, and it turned out good. I sent Keaton one of them, the dog King, and he kept him for a while. And it was one of those dogs he wanted to get pup. I think he wound up with a couple of pups off of it. But anyway, I'm just surprised at how many people, they don't look at that part of it about, like you said, about like breeding down. They don't understand that. Yeah,
you want to breed to the best dogs you can. So you take what you have and try to always breed it something better. Mm-hmm. Don't try to something just because it's local or convenient. And somebody says, "Well, this dog's so great, I just got to get puppies." And the only male I know is, let's say you have a great female. Okay, this dog's so great, I got to breed her. But the only male I know is JoJo's dog down the street. Yep. And it's a blackmouth cur, and I want a cur dog, so I'll breed it because it's right down the street. Well, that's just, you might as well just breed because you love the animal if you're going to do that. I mean, it's just foolish. What you need to do is find the best dog you can get. Some people ask me, which dog should I start off with, a male or a female? My answer is the best dog you can get. That's what you start off with. Yep. And usually it's going to be all right, I don't know if you want me to answer that question, what I would prefer if I was going to start off, what should I get best? Well, first you're going to get I would say get the best dog you can, but very seldom is somebody going to sell you their prize adult dog. And if they do, they're going to charge you a premium for it.
Yes.
So basically, it's easier most times to buy a couple of females. And the reason why I say it's usually easier to buy a couple of females is because you get puppies. And if you get puppies, you don't know if they're going to work, but you try to get good bloodline. And then let's say you buy 2 or 3 puppies and one of them turns out great. The reason this is more successful than buying males is because let's say you have a really good male. What you going to breed it to? I'm not letting you breed it to my female.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let you do it. Because odds are I've got what I want and I don't need what you have.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a female, will I let you breed to my male? Yes, it's called a stud fee. So a lot of times you don't have to buy a good male. You just have to pay a stud fee. So if I have a really good male, I might not sell it to you because I don't want to sell it, but I will let you pay a stud fee. So buy 2 or 3 females and then pay a stud fee to the best male that you can find, because people are probably not going to sell you the best adult male.
Yeah.
They're not going to sell you the best adult female either.
Mm-mm.
But you're not going to be able to breed to their female. If you have a great male, odds are how many people are going to let you breed to their female? You might have, your male has to be really, really something special.
Yes.
To let you use my female.
Yeah, there's I'm with you on that 100% there, but I'm not going to let anybody breed to anything that I have. It would have, like you said, it has to be a superstar. And I'm not saying mine are the greatest in the world, but they're great for me.
Yeah, and it's taken, I don't know how long you've been breeding dogs. How long have you been breeding dogs?
Well, on the hog dog side, 20 years.
Yeah.
But before that, I was born into the game dog stuff. My grandfather, on both sides of my family, my dad, my uncles, then my Uncle Frank, he kept me in it. Man, I couldn't tell you, for many, many years. I've done a lot of things I probably shouldn't have done, but that's why I'm in full agreement with the American Pit Bull Terrier and everything you do. But that's the extent of my dog breeding stuff.
Yeah, so you got 20 years in your hog dogs. Let's just use that.
Yep.
And let's say somebody comes along, they got 2 years experience. They bought a dog 2 years ago, now it's 2 years old. So they got 2 years of experience. What are the odds that person with 2 years experience is going to have a dog on the same level as somebody that's been doing this for 20 years? It can happen, but it doesn't happen often.
No, it does not. We had a guy come in and hunt with us the other night. He has a dog that is really, really excellent young dog, but it came from another man who'd been doing this for 40 years. You know what I mean? So that was a by proxy. It wasn't his breeding. That's the only way,
right,
that something like that would ever interact. But it's, there's very few that's going to just come out of the gate, because I used to think I had hog dogs until I seen some.
Yeah.
I was like, man, I really got a good dog. Then I went with some good dogs and I was like, holy shit, I've got to get to work. And that's where the time and the money, and like you said, having a network, because having 70 plus dogs at one time, it's a lot.
The days of the lords and the kings and whatever you call, whatever words they used over in England.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe in that crap. We all put on our pants the same way, but
that's right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those people, I don't know if you knew it or not, but Keaton and I sold 10 dogs to the Prince of Malaysia. Did you ever hear about that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I'm not into princes and kings and lords and bishops and all that stuff, because what they do is they just basically steal money from the people. But
Mm-hmm.
they could afford to buy 10 dogs from the other side of the country.
Yeah.
That guy spent almost twice on shipping what he paid for the dogs.
Oh, yeah.
The dogs were X dollars, and the shipping was almost twice that much.
Wow.
And when he first called me, he was like, it was kind of hard to hear him. And he was in a plane flying over the Arctic Circle in a plane. And he goes, you know why I'm doing it? And I said, no. Why are you doing that? He goes, because I can. Look, this guy's from Malaysia. They don't even have ice. So he was learning how to fly a plane over the Arctic Circle because he could. Why could he do it? Because they had the money. They stole
Yeah.
the money from the people, basically, to become a prince.
Mhm.
So my point on that is, a long time ago, people could afford to keep 100 dogs
Yeah.
because they were knights and kings and bishops and whatnot. They stole the money from the people. But the working man today can't do that.
No.
And most people can have maybe a large yard. It's pretty much 10 or 12 dogs. That's a big yard. I got 30, which is insane. Nobody has 30 dogs anymore.
Yeah, very, very few people. I don't know how many we actually have. Nate's got probably a better number, around the 40 mark, maybe.
Yeah, we should have.
Yeah, that's really, really rare today.
Yeah, and that is, and I'm not, believe you me, I'm not. That's not a brag or nothing. I'm trying to get rid of dogs. I'm like, listen, I will.
That's absolutely right. I'd love to have my yard cut in half, but I can't do it because
exactly.
population is going to suffer.
Exactly. Hey, on that Prince of Malaysia deal, there was those some plot hounds going in there.
It was 2 plot hounds that came from Jason Sowell.
Yeah.
That's right.
I thought so.
Yep.
Yeah, I seen him those two a long time ago.
Those came from you.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's good to hear.
That's pretty wild. Which I kind of knew. He had told me, the whole, well, not the whole thing, but he told me what was going on, and I actually wound up getting a Yog Terrier he got for me. I told him, I said, if you'll get me this Jag, I mean, it was an actual bay dog, not a kamikaze lunatic. And I got that dog killed the second time I took it hunting. And it was a freak. This dog was baying a big boar hog out in the open. We could see it. It was staying back 5 or 6 feet. The hog bluff charged him a little bit. And then the hog broke. We didn't see the dog anymore. Went over there and it had one little hole right behind his ear. And he was completely paralyzed, and that was the end of that. Wildest thing ever.
He got 2 plot hounds.
Yep.
He got 2 plot hounds, and then he got 8 catch dogs.
Wow.
1 adult catch dog and 7 puppies.
That's cool. Now, I don't know, like I said, those I sent Jason a couple. He called and asked me about them. Like I said, we knew each other through the Yog Terriers, the Jags and stuff. And, which, like I said, I'd had quite a few plot hounds over the years. Well, a few of them. And he told me, he said, man, if you got some, and I sent them to him before that. Now, I couldn't tell you 100% if that's the same ones he sent or not, but that's what he told me he was doing.
Well, I know there was a male and a female,
Mm-hmm.
and if I remember correctly, one of the two, I want to say it was the female, but it may have been the male, had some sort of screw or something in his leg from an injury that is healed, but the dog seemed to be fine.
Yeah.
It was good. It was good.
Should have been Johnny and June.
I don't know.
I think.
I don't remember the names.
It's been a long time ago. Yeah, it's been a long time.
But the dogs worked, and they were healthy and good. They were good dogs. I remember, if I remember correctly, the male dog had better wind, but that female dog was apparently had a good nose on her and would track real well.
Yep.
I don't remember exactly. It's been a long time, but I remember I liked one of them phenotype better, and the other one, they were both good dogs, good dogs.
Which, I mean, any of them Jason has going to be good.
I thought about breeding them. I was like, yeah, these are nice dogs. When you're a dog lover and you see something a little different, but it's still a working dog, it's hard not to respect it.
Yeah, I mean, you got to have appreciation for anything that, you don't have to, but I think anybody that's a dog lover and that really understands working dogs and hunting dogs and dogs that just in general that work. I like watching the sheep dogs, the way they round those sheep up and the way they work them and stuff. I love that. Now, am I going to have one? I have no use for it at all, but it's like, man, I really love that dog, and I could probably find something to breed it to.
Yeah, I liked them. I thought they were pretty cool, and it's stupid that I like the brindle, but I do. I just like the brindle, but I can't let that. That's where we have to be careful of kennel blindness. We can't let kennel blindness make these decisions. We can't breed dogs because we like something. We can't breed dogs because we love something.
Mm-hmm.
We can't breed dogs because of preferences. We just have to be objective and say, does it work or does it not?
Mm-hmm. And so
those plot hounds are good.
So your advice for some of these young guys out there that are getting into this would be to get them a couple of females to start out with?
Well,
If they were going to breed, I mean,
the best dog is get the best dog you can.
Yeah. Okay. Get the best dog you can. I just wanted to make clear on that, so I don't get a call later on or a message said, "Well, man, you told me to get 2 females."
Yeah, get the best dog you can. And
Yeah.
if you don't know, if you don't know anybody well enough to get a favor,
Mm-hmm.
meaning somebody's basically giving you, this is a freaking great dog, use this one.
Yep.
Because some people don't know somebody well enough. Then the only other way to get a great dog is you're going to have to travel and spend money. Because the odds are the guy down the street having the best dog you can get is pretty low. It might happen, but it's not normal.
Mm-hmm.
Usually you got to, not everybody's buddy has the Apex Ace Grand Champion Ace. You need to find the best dog you can. And if you have to travel 500 miles to get it, do it. And if you got to pay $5,000 to get it, do it. But if you can't afford that and you're like, well, I'm going to have to get a puppy. Well, if you have to get a puppy, and a good dog might cost more than $5,000.
Yeah.
But a great dog is going to probably cost you $5,000 or more.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you're buying a puppy. So if you're buying a puppy, there's a gamble. Now you can get a good bloodline, and you can get a good puppy off of a good bloodline bred by good parents, but there's still a degree of gamble. Now, a good breeder will guarantee that dog's health, but he can't guarantee the dog's going to work. He might honor a guarantee. By what I mean by that is he might say, if it doesn't work, I'll replace it, but he might not. But he still, even if he says I'll replace it if it doesn't, even then there's still a chance that he will have to replace it. And if he does have to replace it, odds are the buyer is going to have to pay the shipping to replace it. Because when you return a TV, you still have to pay the shipping. The breeder doesn't get that money, So if you have to buy puppies, get them from a good bloodline, out of good parents, and the parents work, the grandparents work, and then pick a nice prospect. A puppy that's bred in such a way that it has a high chance of working. And if that puppy is old enough to be evaluated, to look for its prey drive, its hunt instinct, its pack instinct, its competence, its nerve, its health, its athleticism, those kind of things, that's going to put things in your favor. But you still have to wait. So you buy your 8-week-old puppy that's athletic and competent and driven, and then you let it grow up. And if you bought 2 or 3 of them, odds are you should have one of them that works.
Yep.
And now that you got one of them that works, then you can find, I can tell you this, I wanted to add power to my muscle mass, to my bloodline one time. Well, in hindsight, I should have never used any of the weight pull dogs. I should have never used them. And I ended up getting rid of all that stuff. But it's about a point. When I wanted to breed to a weight pull dog, I didn't just breed to a dog that competed in weight pull. I looked up which dog held the record or was the best performing dog in the country at the time. And there was a guy named Bonacorsi's Porky, a dog named Bonacorsi's Porky. Now, Porky competed in sled pull and snow. On the old, if I remember correctly, and I could not, I may have the numbers wrong because this was back in 2001. All right, so this was 23 years ago. But if I remember correctly, the old weight pull record was like 800 pounds, and Bonacorsi's Porky pulled 2,000.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't just beat the record; he blew it out the water. Whatever it was like 2.5 times more than the old record. And Bonacorsi's Porky was still alive. So I called up Bob Bonacorsi, and I didn't ask him who's your best male because I already knew what male I wanted. That dog was the best in the country at that event. So I called up Bob Bonacorsi and I said, "What's your best female?" And he told me Rosie. So I said, are you gonna breed Porky to Rosie? And he said, yes. And I said, how much are those pups? And he told me like $2,000 or whatever it was. 3 dogs from him. And one of them was a male and 2 of them were female. And that's what I did when I wanted one dog. I wanted one dog, but I bought 3. Why? Because it doesn't always work out.
And that was what, $6,000?
Yeah, that was in 2001.
Yeah, so that's probably.
I bought the male I got for less. I remember the male I got for $800. He was bred a little bit different.
Oh, okay.
And he was bred a little bit differently, but I bought him for $800. because he just impressed. When I went up there to visit the dog, this is where I said, trust your instincts. So I bought one dog off of Porky and Rosie, and I got another dog off of Porky bred to another bitch that was another bitch that he really liked. I can't remember who that bitch. So I had a bitch named Lucy, was out of Porky and Rosie. I had a bitch named Ina that was out of Porky and another bitch. I can't remember because I got rid of that bloodline. So when I get rid of a bloodline, I don't really worry about his pedigree anymore. Like I said, that was 23 years ago. And then I had a dog named Grit that was bred a little bit differently, but he had game blood crossed into him. A lot of game blood crossed into him. So he was a whopper dog, weight pull dog, bred back to some heavy red boy stuff. That dog, I saw his father in real life. I was like, that's just an impressive dog. And so I trusted my instinct and bought that dog. He was a pretty darn good dog. And if you go look at my dog, Grit, that's the dog I'm talking about. If you look at him on my YouTube, Grit, Splash, Lynn, they were down from that dog. And we do still have some of Grit in there. So all the whopper stuff we have today, which is about 1% of our blood, comes from Grit. 99% of our stuff has nothing to do with Grit, but there is about 1% of the stuff that goes back to Grit because it's very little. It's very, very little, but it's in there.
With the American Sentinels that you have, and there's going to be a lot of interest in it from a lot of the hog hunters, of course. There already is, but like I said, with a lot of the younger guys, they listen to the podcast and follow some social media and stuff like that. What size dog are we talking here? And is it more like a pit bull style dog, or I know you said you don't have a whole lot of mastiff in it. Give us a description of the size and weight, and look at the dog.
Well, if you use Jason Sowell, I'm sure you met Dozer. Dozer was unusually small for an American. He was unusually small for an American Sentinel. His brothers were significantly bigger than him. In fact, one of the dogs that we sent to Prince of Malaysia was related to Dozer, if I remember correctly. I may have to go back and double check that, but let's see. Dozer was. I had a dog named. Yeah, that's right. That is right. So Jason Sowell had Dozer. I had a dog named Vlad, and the dog that we sent to the Prince of Malaysia that was an adult catch dog was a dog named Red Rum. And Red Rum was a full brother to Dozer, a full brother to Vlad. And Red Rum, of course, is murder in reverse. But that's anyway. Dozer was small. He was probably like 55, 60 pounds.
Yeah,
but that's unusually small. He was 75% pit bull, 25% mastiff, if I remember correctly. That's right. And then, because he was out of Preacher Man, bred to Wild Thing. Wild Thing was 100% pit bull, but Preacher Man was a 50-50 cross. Preacher Man was 50% Sorrel Captain Skip and 50% Eclipse and English Mastiff. So we had Preacher Man at 50-50 pit English bred back to 100% pit. So that made Dozer 75% pit. And even at 75%, at 55, 60 pounds, he was really small. Just for comparison, Vlad, his full brother, was about 85 pounds. And Red Rum was probably a solid 80. Red Rum was ripped.
Wow.
I'm not talking, there was no fat on that dog. That dog was ripped, and he was 80 pounds. Most of our male Sentinels, though, are going to be 80 to 100 pounds. A few of them might be as big as 110. I personally don't like them that big because even if you do have a dog even if you have a dog at 110 pounds that has stamina and has heat tolerance, you still don't have, and you can still have speed too. You can have a big dog that's fast, stamina, and heat tolerance. That does happen on occasion. It's not common, but it does happen. But you almost never have quickness, and quickness is different than speed.
Yes.
Speed is how fast can you run in a straight line. Quickness is, can you catch the rabbit though?
There you go.
Well, you can turn direction and do it quickly. I've never seen 110 pound dogs quick. I like dogs that are basically, my females, I like anywhere from 65 to 85 pounds. My males, anywhere from 75 to 95 or 100.
That's nice. I mean, to me, that's huge. That's a big dog to us. But at the same time,
big if it's lean.
Sir,
that is big if it's lean. But the optimal dogs are probably going to be, for me, optimal dogs are going to be around 80 to 90 pounds.
Okay, I got you. Well, like I said, that's just, we're so used to running smaller dogs. I mean, a lot of our stuff, all our bulldogs are 40 pounds, 45.
Right.
And at one time, I had a couple of dogs that were a little bigger, but they just couldn't take the heat, but they weren't designed for that. You know what I mean? They just weren't bred for that. We've got a wolfhound with a little deerhound in it right now, and that dog's really doing really good. It's doing really good. And I'm kind of anxious to see what it's going to do this coming summer, because we didn't start until this fall. So I'm kind of curious about the heat.
That has a lot to do with the respiratory system. Yep, respiratory has a lot to do with heat tolerance. I'm a real stickler for heat tolerance because we do protection work in hot weather here in Mississippi. And I will say my optimal dog is about 80 to 90 pounds, but for hog hunting, I would say take about 5 pounds off that. For protection work, maybe 5 pounds more than that. Because you're dealing with a different beast. If you're out there in the woods and you have to run 5 miles and it's 80 degrees out, then a little bit smaller dog is going to have a little bit more advantage over that bigger dog.
Yeah.
Because you're still dealing with physics. No matter how good that respiratory system is, a bigger dog has a harder time dissipating heat. But there are dogs that can do it. They're just not common.
Yeah. And you said you got a YouTube channel. And do you have many videos of your dogs working in action, or is it more educational or what? Okay, we have a lot of protection videos on there. I used to put hog videos on there, and I started getting YouTube strikes because they don't like to see that blood. Yeah, I agree. They wear us out.
They killed my whole channel, and I had to take out every hog hunting video. Yeah. Now, this is where I'm going to put a plug in for Elon Musk. Go to that platform X.
Okay.
You can put whatever you want on X. And then after you put it on X, then you can share it on Facebook or whatever. I don't put hot. I used to use what's called Rumble, but I don't like Rumble because you go put something on Rumble, you can never find it. I mean, I don't even know. I've got like a dozen hog hunting videos on Rumble, and I can't find a one up.
Yeah, we went over there too, and it just wasn't. It ain't for us either. But now we haven't tried X. I haven't. So we're going to check that out. I created a new group last week. I created a new group on it's called American Pit Bull Terriers and Bandogs on X. It's either Bandogs and American Pit Bull Terriers or American Pit Bull Terriers and Bandogs. Okay. But I don't remember. But anyway, I shouldn't remember my own group. But I created that because on X, you have freedom of speech. They don't censor you. You can say what you want. I mean, as long as it's legal, they don't care. Yeah. And so, I'm going to have to I definitely want to check that out because we're so censored. We're throttled down to where, you talk about the freedom of speech and being able to do this and that. Hell, we can't do nothing. Like we put some vape pen videos up and they gave us our 3 strikes in a month and a half.
Well, no, they gave us one. Hold on. They gave us one at the beginning of the month, and then I woke up and the channel was deleted. They gave us 2 in the middle of the night.
Yeah, like boom, 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 you're done. And I had that channel for over 10 years.
Yeah, I had to take all mine down because they were going to delete my channel, and I just went crazy one night.
Yeah,
I searched up hog on my video and just selected them all and deleted them all before I lost my channel.
Yeah.
But, Facebook's kind of the same way. I read Facebook's policy on animal stuff, and you can go buy an animal for, and what do they call it? You can buy an animal on Facebook to sacrifice it for religious reasons if you worship the devil or something. But you cannot post a video of something that of puppies that might be for sale. You can't do that. You can sell it for religious reasons so somebody can sacrifice it.
Oh my Lord!
Sell it to a hunter. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous. And so we have all these. Oh, it's ridiculous. You have all these rights to protect all these special interest groups, but you don't have rights for people who are hunting hogs that are destroying farmland and destroying wildlife.
Mm-hmm.
You can't share that. So. That's why I like X. If it's legal, they let you share it.
Yeah.
They may not let you share something illegal, but who's doing something illegal? Who would want to share something illegal anyway?
Exactly. Why would you ever want to? Yeah, that would be dumb. The dumbest thing ever. And I mean, I had we had a game camera in a corn pile at our lease up here that's not ours. We didn't know whose it was. We called everybody. Anyway, it turned out it was just a kid that put it out there. Well, I took the camera and brought it home, and I had a woman message me. She said, "So how's stealing game cameras working out for you?" I said, "Well, I made a big old post about me taking it off the property, so I'm not real good at it." And she blocked me, then I couldn't respond. And that's what one of the guys said that was on the post. He said, "You're not a real good at stealing stuff if you're giving your full confession." I said, "Yeah, I know." I said, "It's pretty tough." Like, why would you ever want to bring it to the public? But there are people out there that they will do some dumb stuff like that.
Yeah,
there's no doubt about it.
Ridiculous. But yeah, check out X. And it's not surprising if you look at what's his name, Zuckerberg.
Yeah,
Zuckerberg created Face Smash to rate women, so he started his whole platform off of unethical stuff. Now, me personally, I'm not for electric cars, but Elon Musk, he started Tesla so we could eventually get off the grid and get solar power. And even though that's not my cup of tea, his agenda was not corrupt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got where I like him a lot more.
He had PayPal to serve people. He had Tesla to serve people. I know if you're running, it's stupid to run an electric car off a diesel generator. But the goal was to eventually get solar power.
Yeah. But SpaceX, look, we're never going to live on Mars. I think that's kind of foolish. But his agenda, his reason is because he wants to proliferate. So, he's quite a bit different than Zuckerberg, who wants to shut us and silence us and make us slaves.
Yeah. I agree with that. Like I said, at first I was like, with Elon Musk, I was like, I don't know about this guy. And Nathan, he's the one that kind of got me more involved in it. It's like, well, just pay attention to what he's doing. And then I didn't realize how much of an advocate he is for being independent, and saying, hey, we want independence, and we don't want to have to rely on somebody that's throttling us or strangling us, our government. We don't have to rely on them for every little thing. And like the freedom of speech and all that stuff, I really dig that. So I definitely going to go check that out, because I like to be able to say whatever I want to say.
Something else real quick. I'm going to divert back to genetics, because your son sent me one topic on inbreeding coefficient. I went through that list that he sent me, and we hit most of the topics, but inbreeding coefficient is something I didn't discuss. So real quick, let me give something to your viewers again. I'm going to send your son a link to a calculator that will determine inbreeding coefficient if you want to plug in a pedigree.
Yes.
But you got to spell it correctly. So if one time you can't spell it with a capital letter, you need to use a capital letter every time. If you want to just use lowercase, just use lowercase every time. If you do a misspace at all, it's going to get it as a different name. So it's just like a password. When you enter that name of that pedigree, you have to enter it the same way every time. Otherwise, you're going to think it's a different dog. But if you, I'll send this calculator to your son.
Yeah, Nate.
And if he has a way of sharing it with your viewers or listeners,
it'll be linked down below.
We can put it in the description.
Yeah, he can link that to them for them to use it, and that'll give them an inbreeding coefficient. Now, personally, some people seem to think that the higher the inbreeding coefficient, the better. That's not the case. You really have to worry about, again, selecting the right dog. But as a general rule, when you get over 25% inbreeding coefficient, you're going to have what's called inbreeding depression, which means your litter size is going to go down. Your general health and fitness of the population will start to decline. Now, that's not always true. There are exceptions. The American Pit Bull Terrier tends to be one of those exceptions, because so much inbreeding has happened in this population that they've kind of culled a lot of the diseases that other breeds have. So with the Pit Bull, you can get up to about 30% before you'll see really inbreeding depression. But by the time you're at 30 to 35%, no matter how good that line is, you're going to, generally speaking, start to see a reduction in litter size. So I would try to stay, if you want to do line breeding and inbreeding, generally speaking, it's probably wise to stay under 25%. When it, maybe 10%, 15%. But at the same time, this is, again, if you're trying to do line breeding. If you're not trying to do line breeding, don't worry about it. Just breed the best animals you can by selecting the best animals. And then slowly get an understanding of genetics over time. And you'll kind of get an idea. People, if they really want to know genetics, they need to learn meiosis. Meiosis is cell division that produces gametes. And gametes are going to be your sperm and your egg. When you do that, you'll realize that a wise man knows he's a fool, and it's very wise to just copy nature and performance test and select and cull. Performance test, select, and cull.
That's something really good to go by there. There's no doubt. Performance test, select, and cull. Yep. Ain't no doubt. That's the coefficients deal. That was something I was really interested in. I told Nate, I said, put that on there. I said, I want to, because I hear, I heard so much about it. And then you see in a lot of the pedigrees and stuff. And I've had people, they're like, well, the inbreeding coefficient is this and all that. And I'm like, okay, I just wanted to know, how much of a factor did that really play into it with mainly the American Pit Bull Terriers, what I'm talking about.
Sure. Well, there's two coefficients that people refer to. One of them is called inbreeding coefficient, and the other one is called the coefficient of relationship or relationship coefficient.
Okay.
So the COI stands for coefficient of inbreeding, and then RC stands for relationship coefficient. That's two different things. So an inbreeding coefficient means what are the odds or what's the likelihood of for example, let's say you had dog A bred to bitch B, and you had puppy AB, and then you bred dog A back to the puppy, right? So that puppy is going to have 75% relationship coefficient to the father.
Oh.
But it's only going to have, that's going to be what's called the RC. But it's only going to have 25% coefficient of inbreeding, because half of the genes that he gave as the father will be shared by him being also the grandfather. So what's half of half? Half of 50% is
25%. Yeah.
That's the inbreeding. Yep. So that's the inbreeding coefficient. And
okay.
so inbreeding coefficient means what are the odds basically of the dog being homozygous for a specific trait from a certain individual.
Mm-hmm. Man.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 25% of the genes would be inbred, and then but still 75%. You got another 50% almost that's not inbred, but still coming from him.
Yeah.
So the relationship coefficient is 75%, but the inbreeding coefficient is 25%.
So yeah, and that makes a world of sense to me now, because like before I didn't really understand exactly what the RC deal was either. Like I said, I knew what it meant, but like the way you explained it there is that was really simplified.
Yeah, inbreeding is going to be coming from both sides and shared at the same address, shared at the same location.
I got you. And then man, you're just a wealth of knowledge, dude. I mean, like I wish I'd contacted you 20 years ago. I'm serious, dude. You could save me a damn headache.
I'm a human being stumbling through the performance selection just like everybody else.
I heard that. Well, I'm really, really interested in these dogs. I mean, I love dogs in general, but like I said, I've seen a couple, and I think Coulter Pyron had some of those when you were doing with the weight pull dogs. I think that's the ones he was telling me.
He had weight pull dogs. I didn't really have weight pull dogs.
Okay, that might have been him.
I had already gotten rid of the weight pull stuff when I met him. But he really liked that weight pull stuff. So he was asking me about the Camelot dogs and the draw the line and then the Whopper dogs and
that's
Chevy Red dogs.
Chevy Red, yeah. I remember.
Dagger dogs.
Dagger, yeah.
Dagger dogs. Me personally, of all those lines, if you were going to mess with any of them, I think a well-bred Whopper dog was better than the rest of them combined. But even the Whopper dogs, I just don't believe you're going to get stamina.
Yeah.
I don't believe you're going to get the gameness. So we got away from that stuff, and we just went back to sorrels. And I hate to say that we used Mayday, but there's nothing wrong with Mayday. The reason why I hate to say it is because Mayday became so popular.
Yeah.
You know, there's what's called the flavor of the month. Well, he wasn't the flavor of the month. He was the flavor of the 2 decades.
Yeah, that's going to say 20 years. Yeah.
Right. And since he was the flavor of 2 decades, every Tom, Dick, and Harry was breeding Mayday.
Mayday and Frisco.
Yeah, and so they got so popular, but they weren't tested. So it lost its spice. It really did. It lost its spice because these people were just proliferating Mayday without testing. Well, if you got Mayday from the right people that were still performance testing, you can get some really good dogs. But they lost their flavor because everybody was just putting them together and dropping them on the ground. But we had sorrels and Mayday that came from working lines, and they were really good.
Good deal. Good deal.
And, well, even the Mayday stuff, though, there was one guy involved in that pedigree that we had that didn't really test his stuff. And that one guy made my work hard because in one generation, we could get dogs that would work, but you might have 10 puppies, and out of the 10, you'd have two or three good ones. So you'd have 7 or 8 that weren't very good. I had to refine that stuff. And, after a couple of generations of breeding it, then it became worthy to cross into my sorrels. Yeah. Or cross to, the American Sentinels. But initially, even the Mayday stuff that I got, which was still from working except for one person can run a line.
So what kind of percentage are you're talking about? Like you said, you say y'all had 10 and only 2 were worth a damn. What are you looking at as a litter now in your program and stuff? What kind of numbers are you turning out on a litter that make dogs?
Yeah, that's a good question. So how many meet the bar? Well, the higher the bar, the fewer meet it.
Yes. And
so, I always, to a degree, when I say 2 out of 10 were working and that was low, that was expecting good stuff with a pretty high bar. But keeping that bar up high, you have dogs that work and dogs that don't work. Now, if I had a litter of 10 puppies, I want to see 8 of them working, and maybe two that don't work. Now, out of those 8 that work, I want to see 5 of them work really damn good. So there's average working ability. So average working ability or better, maybe 8. 5, half the litter working really good is damn good. If you got half the litter working damn good, you're doing damn good. And then out of those 5 that work really good, which ones are you keeping for the breeding, the gene pool, if you will? The breeding dogs have to be the best of the best. So when I sell a dog, and I hate to say this, but I'll tell you, because it's going to turn some people off. We sell some dogs cheap. I mean, most of my dogs go anywhere from $1,000 to $4,000. But we sell dogs occasionally for $300 or $500. Well, guess what they are? They're the ones that are they might work, but they might not. And there's no guarantee they're going to work, because what I see is potential, but I'm not going to put them in a very demanding home. Because, like, if somebody calls me up, believe it or not, this is kind of crazy. Some people hog hunters may not like this, but protection work is harder on a dog's brain, and hog catching is harder on a dog's body. And the reason for that is because dogs have been selected to not bite people. And so since they've been selected to not bite people, when you get a dog that will bite a person, a lot of times it depends on how it's biting. I'm not wanting fear biters. I'm not talking about fear biters. I'm talking about dogs that go in there convinced like they're catching a pig. When you find a dog that'll catch a person like it catches a pig, you've got an ace of a dog. Now, a lot of people think those dogs are mean. If you have a mean dog, you've got the wrong dog, because these dogs are not mean. They're not dangerous. They're not unstable with the kids. They're not unstable with the family. These are loyal dogs that have been trained to target strangers that they don't know or people who are unwelcome. They're stable dogs.
Yeah.
But catching a hog, that's hunting.
That's right.
Dogs have an instinct to hunt.
Mm-hmm.
It's an instinct that they have been bred to do. So it's easier to get a dog that's willing to hunt a pig than it is willing to hunt a man. All right.
I definitely could see that,
Yeah, but the physical demands are harder on a hog hunt, because a hog hunt, that dog might have to work. It might have to run 5 miles. Maybe you have to run 10 miles. And you might think, well, nobody's running 10 miles. Well, they run 1 mile in a circle 10 times. That's 10 miles.
That's right.
Because they ain't running a straight line.
That's right.
So that doesn't happen, of course, very often, but it can happen if a hog breaks bay or something like that.
Oh, yeah. We got some guys now that, and we've been in some of these hogs, talking about like how things evolve. Man, some of these hogs are really running now. Like they're taking long races, longer to stop, but that's with a dog that doesn't put much teeth on them, I like a dog that's going to grab a hold of them.
Yeah. So if somebody called me up and said, Lee, I want an ace of a dog, no problem. We can get you an ace of a dog, but it's going to cost you. And somebody else might say, well, Lee, I got $300 or $500. I do not have very many $300. It's almost never.
Yeah.
$500. Okay. Let's say I got pups that are 3 or 4 months old. I got some that they show potential. Maybe they'll work. Maybe they won't. You can have one of them for $500 because that's going to cover my vet bills. That's going to cover my feed bills. That's going to cover my equipment, my time. But it's not profitable.
No. And there's people out here right now that think $500 is an extreme amount to pay for a dog. I'm like, shit. Negative.
Well, I spend $1,500 a month on dog food.
Yes, sir. I fully understand.
Yep. And then you got equipment.
And your dogs are a lot bigger than your dogs are way bigger than ours, and we feed a lot of feed. I couldn't imagine feeding those big dogs.
My kennels are $50,000. Just
holy
kennels.
Shit!
Yeah, have you seen my kennel or not?
No, I have not. That's what I said. I got to get on there and check you out and see what all you got going on YouTube and stuff like that, and on social media. I just don't get on there like I used to because of all the drama. You know how that stuff goes. And so I find myself with like Facebook, I find myself where I'll get on there, check my notifications about once a week and then get off. But I've lost touch with so many people because I do that. And so now I got to get back into the groove and kind of check everybody out. But I definitely am going to go look at them. Probably will here in just shortly.
Tell Nathan to check his messenger and show you a picture.
Well,
I just sent him
I thought you had some big old nice kennels. Holy shit.
Yeah, those are sweet.
Dude, if y'all could see what I just seen, yeah. He's got some money in those kennels.
Yeah.
And those are super nice.
It's not cheap to run a breeding program.
No.
You got to have kennels, you have to have food, you have to have vet bills, you have to have equipment, and then you have to have probably at least 40 hours a week, if not 60 or 80.
Yeah. There's so many people that don't understand the amount of time it takes to really, really take care of all the dogs, especially when you have, like you said, you have a yard like yours, 30 dogs, 20, 30 dogs.
Yeah. I've never had somebody give me a dog that I wanted. I've had a lot of people call me up and say, hey, Lee, I got a dog. You want it? And I'm like, no.
Yeah. But I'll take it.
No, I don't. I don't take it.
I got on a kick for a while. I was like, I don't know what was wrong with me. I was like the damn rescue center of the world. And
right. People call you up and say, I found a dog. You want it? And I'm like, I don't run a rescue. I got a breeding program. This is like, I'm getting rid of dogs that I like.
Yeah. And that's where we got to the point where it was like, used to I could cull and get, and get the yard to the numbers we wanted. And honestly, it's a good problem to have because it got to a point where it's like, okay, we can't cull anything. Like we're there.
There's not a dog on my yard that I would not buy.
That same thing. And so where do you go from there? It's like, so now we gotta cull the people that we send them to.
Yeah, we got to cull the people. And if you have a dog on your yard that you if you have a dog on your yard, I'm still saying it wrong. If you don't have a dog on your yard My point is, every dog in your yard you'd be willing to buy. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
Every dog in your yard is so nice that you'd be willing to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have a list and you don't have space. Now, the ones you're getting rid of are freaking nice dogs.
Yes.
And that's the problem that you want to have. Even though it sucks to get rid of a dog you want to keep, that's the problem that our customers want. That's the problem that your customers want. They want to know that they're getting a quality dog. But those quality dogs, I'm not trying to be a gold digger, but I have to finance the program. If I can't finance the program, then you're going to be left to getting dogs from the pound.
Yeah, you can't have that high of a quality.
You need good breeders. You got to support your good breeders that are producing good dogs. And if you're not willing to support your good breeders, if you just want your $300 dog, then that means you need to be satisfied with a very low performance.
Yes, without a doubt. And well, I've seen that happen over the years with certain breeds where, like with the Jags, when I first started messing with them years ago, it was, a couple $1,000s a puppy. And then it got to where it was, $1,000. Then more people got them. Then it was, you'd see them for $800. Then it was $500. And then it was, hell, $200 or $300. You could go get whatever you wanted. And I was like, dude, if that's what you want, that's fine. But you're not getting one for me. I don't care.
I will probably tell you the best catch dog you ever saw was probably Boss. Boss was born here, and Boss was given away to a friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
But so somebody will say, well, the best dog I ever got was free, or the best dog I ever got was $300. Well, that doesn't happen very often.
No.
Okay, it can happen, but those anomalies are pretty rare.
Mm-hmm. And that dog, just because it was great for you. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, he was a great dog. Boss was a great dog.
Yeah.
I gave it to a friend of mine under the rights that the reason I gave that dog away is I wanted to breed, but I couldn't keep him. And so this guy, he had bought a couple of dogs from me. He gave me a dog box for a dog, and he bought a dog for $500. And then Boss came into my hands, and I said, "Look, you can have Boss if I can breed him." And he said, "Yeah." So that's why he got that dog. And Boss turned out to be a great dog. And Boss may have been one he paid for, and he gave me the dog box for a different dog. I don't remember.
I got you.
He got 3 dogs from me, and one of them was free, and I think it was Boss, but maybe I'm misspoken. But my point on that, he didn't pay a lot of money for any of them, but that's not how it normally works. Normally, if you want the best dog I got, you have me out there in that yard evaluating these pups and looking for the prospects. And I'm going to tell you, this one's number 1, this one's number 2, this one's number 3, and this one's 2,500, this one's 1,500, this one's 500. And then they say, well, what's the difference? There's puppies you can't tell. And my thoughts are, well, you can't tell, but I can.
Yeah, that's the difference. It's the breeder and the knowledge.
Yeah, and some people will say, well, and it's funny because somebody will say, well, they should all be priced the same because they're puppies and you can't tell. And then my thoughts are, well, which one do you want? And they're like, I want that one. And I'm like, well, why do you want that one? You can't tell.
Yeah, just grab one. That's a good analogy. Hey, that's good right there. I hadn't even said it like that before. I'm going to have to throw that in there.
If they're all the same, if they're all the same and they should be priced the same, then it shouldn't matter which one you're going to get.
Yeah, I'll pick it out for you.
Well, I will pick it out for them, and it'll be the best one until they want to pay the lowest price. If they want to play the lowest price,
Yeah.
They can't tell. I'll say, well, if you can't tell, you might as well take the sorry one.
Yeah.
And I don't want to ever do that to a customer, but my point is it causes them to change perspective real quick because then they realize they want the best one, but they don't want to pay for it.
That's right. Ain't no doubt. I like that though. If anybody ever says that to me, that's exactly what I'm gonna say. I'm just like, well, hell, I'll just pick this one out, and it don't matter which one it is if they're all the same.
Yeah.
Because, like you said a while ago, you're expecting the X amount to make it, but all of them are going to be at different levels. We worked a whole litter today, and 2 of them done great. 2 of them were baying really good. One of them thought he was a bulldog, and the other one had 0 interest.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like there is a difference in them. There's a big difference.
And I'll tell you this. I've never had a good pup that I did my part on that didn't also turn out to be a good dog. Every good pup that I did my part on turned out to be a good dog.
There you go. There you go.
And the only ones that did not turn out to be a good dog were dogs that I did not do my part on. And they still would have done okay at hog hunting, because what happens is, like, for example, when my father died or my wife got cancer, I didn't work the dogs as much as I should have, because I was busy with doing other things. And sometimes you might get a dog that, okay, it's not going to, if you put a kid in education and you develop and stimulate the brain, those early years will have a permanent effect on how smart that child will be. Well, the same is true for a dog. When you imprint those pups on do flirt pole work or training, it allows that dog to reach a higher potential. But if you don't do your part, believe it or not, I think to some degree it's going to have a greater impact on the environment, how they respond to environments, than it will on hunting. A lot of those dogs will still hunt, because hunting is a very primal, basic instinct. Now, you might not have a dog that's good at riding a four-wheeler. You might not have a dog that's good getting in the car or the dog box. You might not have a dog that's good for walking through Home Depot. But in the woods, that a lot of those dogs will still work.
Yeah. And, you know, if people would really look at the whole aspect of, like you were saying, doing your part, just the flirt pole, getting the puppies out, exercising them, spending time with them, doing your part. If you would, because there's so many people that just want to go buy a dog or go get another one, work what you have also. Even if you're not in a breed, say these guys don't have a breeding program, say they went and got puppies, you have to do your part no matter what, or the dog is never going to reach its potential.
Yeah, and don't exhaust the dog. They're like, one more time.
Amen.
Well, too much work can break down muscle. All right, so you need to work it where they're stimulated, they're excited, they take it to another level, and then you break them off, and let them scratch one more time back on the hog, or bay one more time, just so they're really. It's kind of like that. Remember when we were kids and we got video games?
Oh yeah.
If you play that same game day after day after day, you might love that game for a month, but eventually you get tired of it. Well, but if you take that same game and you let them play for only 30 minutes a day, and then that next thing you know, they love the game for 2 years.
Yep.
So it's kind of like the same thing with the dog. Always stop them when they're scratching back for more.
On a high note. Yep.
Yeah, I'll stop them on a high note. Let them get a good win, break them off, let them scratch back, get that taste again for catching that hog or baying that hog, whatever it is. Then break them off and put them away. And let them think, man, I can't wait to go do it again. Don't put them up. Don't wait till they're exhausted and burn out hot and want to lay in the creek. Now you're going to extinguish that drive. You might love fried chicken, but if you eat 20 pieces, you don't love it.
That's it. Ain't no doubt about that shit. So if our listeners out here, I'm going to say but when they get ready to go check you out on YouTube, what's your channel under?
Well, my YouTube channel is American Sentinel. I have 2 YouTube channels, and I'll tell you why. I do not like selling stuff. I would rather people see my stuff and say, you know what, I like what he produces. I want to buy one. That's the way I want to be. I don't want to convince somebody. I don't want to people call me up and say, hey, I really want a puppy. Can you call me back when they're born? I hate to say it, but my answer is no. I'm not going to call you back if you don't have a deposit, because I don't want to ask you to make a deposit. You need to decide if you want to place a deposit. You look at my dog, you like my dog, you send a deposit, then I'll call you back. But if you don't place a deposit, when my pups are born, I'm not going to call 20 people saying, will you please send me money? I'm just not going to do it. I hate it when people call me up asking me to buy something. So I'm not going to do that to anybody else. And so as a result of that, I have 2 YouTube channels. One is American Sentinel K-9. On that channel, you're going to find information and videos of our dogs working, but you will not see puppies for sale. I don't do it. And then I have another video or YouTube channel called American Sentinel K-9 Productions. These are the videos of our puppies, because I believe that if I put puppy videos on my primary channel, which is information, if I did that all the time, I'm going to run away. I'm going to push those people away that don't want to be solicited. They don't want to see puppy videos. They're not interested in buying anything. They just want there to go look at information. Okay, so that's what American Sentinel K-9's for, is information. And then American Sentinel K-9 Productions, that's my puppy videos. If you want a puppy, you can check out the productions page.
Okay.
And then our website is AmericanBandog.com. And on our website, AmericanBandog.com, we have a page for Bandogs, which is American Sentinels. And then we have another page, or category tab, I should say, because it's multiple pages on Bandogs. And then another tab has multiple pages on Pit Bulls. So we breed both.
10-4. Well, that's what, and Nate's going to put the links and stuff to the stuff in our descriptions, and it'll be available on. we get on YouTube. We got it on YouTube and Spotify, and what else is it? Apple.
Yeah, Apple as
Yeah,
well.
we got it on Apple as well. And
go create an X page where you can share your videos.
Yes.
That's going to get a lot of growth, because people love that. Facebook is weird. They will say we deleted this post because it looks like you were trying to get likes.
yes.
Well, if you don't want me to get likes, why do you have the like button there?
Yeah, what's that? I don't understand that part. It's like, well, you've reached all your friends list. I'm like, how do you know? How can you put a limit on how many friends I have?
Right.
Even though I don't, but there's, like you said, there's general restrictions, and it's just, I don't know. It's old.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't even get on there anymore. Honestly, I get on Instagram more than I do anything. And
Yeah, I've never been much on Instagram. I don't like that platform. You can share a picture or a video, but you can't. It seems like it's limited on your links. You can't put like a link to your website, or you can't really have discussion groups on Instagram, or can you? I don't know.
I don't know about discussion groups. Not that I know. I don't think I've seen any that's like that. Not discussion groups or anything. But and I'll be honest with you, the reason I go to it is because the people that I follow, they're on my algorithm. I'll scroll through there, see what everybody's doing, or I'll see it on the stories or a reel, and I move on.
Right.
I just
Yeah, but Instagram is owned by Meta, and Meta is owned by Facebook. So I would say if they're going to restrict, if you're going to be restricted on Facebook, you're going to end up being restricted eventually on Meta
Sure.
or on Instagram.
Oh,
But
yeah.
If you go to X, there's a tab at the bottom that shows like an outline of two people. That's called the Communities tab, and you can click on that, and you can create a group for your special interest that you like hog hunting.
Huh.
And once you create that group on hog hunting, you can invite people like your friends that hog hunt and develop a community the same way a Facebook group does.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be doing that here just a little bit.
Yeah, I just created one last week, and it's only got like 15 people in it so far because I just created it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to try to promote that because I do think that it sucks that we have hours of hog hunting videos and we can't share them. So we need to be putting that up on X.
I agree 100%. There's so many people that we see, and that we personally know, and that we meet. We go to these events and stuff like that. We hang out a lot when we go to the bay pens and all that. With Boars N Broads, those guys are there, and you can't put the real content up. You can't. Like you said, it gets taken down as soon as you put it up. Where there's any thing that shows a good catch dog hitting a hog, most of the time they're going to snatch you down.
Well, Keaton got one video. I don't know if he's told you about it or shared it with you. Unbelievable video. He was hunting with a solo catch dog, and that catch dog had a hog in his mouth, on the ear,
Mm-hmm.
but it didn't probably have the best grip or something. I'm not sure. But you can see the hog rooting in that dog's jaw, and that hog hit the dog in the jaw. And when and it was an American Sentinel, and when he hit that dog in the jaw, I don't know if the grip got loose or what, but I do know the ear tore. But I know that also if you're grabbing, let's say you're holding a piece of leather with a pair of pliers, if you loosen your grip, you can snatch that leather out of that pliers, but it might tear the leather. But if you're holding it real tight, it probably will be harder to snatch. But anyway, that hog hit that dog in the jaw, snatched its ear out. The ear got torn, and that hog charged Keaton. And this is on video. The hog, he pulled out his backup firearm, and shot that hog, and the muzzle of the firearm ended up touching the hog on the head on that last shot.
Yeah, I seen it. I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah.
Dude, that's one of the best videos I've ever seen.
Yeah, I'm going to put that video together.
Are you?
And we're going to put it on X. Yeah, I am going to end up sharing it, but I got to slow it down, get the freeze frames, because that camera's flying through the air. He lost his camera flying through the air, but as it's flying, you can see him holding the pistol, and you can see glimpses of the hog at times. The camera goes underwater. It's just a really interesting and dramatic thing. But the point of this video is you don't want the hog to get away from the dog.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which is like we had some good. Go ahead.
With two.
Yeah,
you
with two of them.
Two dogs, a male and a female. Or two dogs at least work together.
That's what we do. We run a male and a female. So I mean, sometimes we'll take 3 or 4 dogs just to have back, depending on how long we're going to hunt. Because sometimes our hunts we'll be gone from, and we'll hunt Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So we got to have multiple dogs. But doing it like that, like this year, talking about the videos, we had a hog bayed and it wound up going inside of a beaver hut. And now keep in mind, we're running GoPros on some of our dogs. We have some unbelievable footage. You can't even post it. So we definitely need to get over there and check that out.
Yeah, I'm going to put that video together. We're going to drop it on X, and I'm going to explain, the good and the bad of that video. I mean, Rex is apparently a pretty solid dog, but that hog did slip out of his mouth, and that's not a good thing for it to slip out of his mouth. Yes, the ear did rip. But I wondered if he would have had a better grip, if that would have happened. It might not have ripped. It might have ripped. But that's why you have a second dog. Because, even if you try to get a good grip on an ear, you get slammed under your jaw. And you can't tell me your teeth aren't going to rattle. And when your teeth rattle, that could loosen up that grip. And Keaton doesn't think that he loosened his grip. Keaton thinks he kept a grip. And he may have kept a grip. But with the ear torn, I don't want to ever be kennel blind, so I'm harder on myself, and I'm harder on my dogs than anybody else. And Rex was born here. And so if Rex was born here, part of me says, okay, maybe Keaton's right. Maybe he didn't loosen his grip. Maybe that the ear just flat out tore. But another part of me says, would Agro have lost him? Or would Agro have kept him? Because Agro is a freaking beast. But unfortunately, Agro got killed. I don't know if you heard about that.
No.
Yeah, do you know who Agro is?
No, I was trying. That's why I was trying to think of that name. It seems like
Agro is an awesome catch dog. He's probably caught a couple hundred hogs. My dog Scratches and Bumper's brother, and he was one of the most prolific breedings that I ever did. I have a bitch named Elsa that's his sister. Yeah. But Agro caught a bunch of hogs. And Keaton felt like he was his favorite dog. Well, Keaton came home, and there was 2 German Shepherds, some sort of giant XL bully pit bull type of dog. And then there was another like black lab pit bull looking cross dog, and they were all over 90 pounds or so. And 2 of them were dead, but it cost Agro his life.
I do remember it now. That's why I said when you said that, I was like, I remember the name, and I wasn't even thinking about it being Keaton's. But I remember when all those dogs jumped on him. He killed 2 or 3 of them.
Somebody dropped 4 dogs off at Keaton's house. They saw them dogs. That's what people do. They see a person that has a bunch of dogs, and they think they want strays. I don't want strays. Keaton doesn't want strays. Don't drop your dogs off at my house just because you see I have dogs.
No, we don't want them. So, this used to be the county drop off right here. I swear to God, we live right in this big, in a Y on a back road on a county road, and dude, for a long time, at least once a month, I would have a mama dog and some puppies. Like you said, I don't want that dog. I don't need that dog.
Right. It cost Keaton a dog that was worth $10,000.
Yeah.
Those four dogs, 90 pounds. I don't care how good you are. 4 dogs, 90 pounds.
Shit. Yeah. Can't do all that, yeah. But he did, and now he killed a couple of them, though, didn't he?
Yeah, a couple of them were dead, and then Keaton ended up getting rid of the last 2.
Yeah, that's right. I was going to say, because best I could remember, I was pretty sure Keaton said that that dog had killed a couple of dogs, but there was 4 or 5 of them on him. I was like, because I was thinking to myself, I was like, damn, that dude was still doing his job. You know, he's done all he could do.
Yeah, that was Agro, and Agro was a better dog than Rex. Rex is a decent dog, don't get me wrong, but Agro is an ace.
I got you. Well, let's see where we're at on time here. About 2 hours and 40 minutes into it, Mr. Lee.
Yep.
You got anything else you want to kind of throw out there before we cut this one? And we can always do another one. We could do a part 2 and 3 and 5, whatever, because this knowledge you have.
Well, I'm just a man like everybody else. We just stumble, like I say, try to make try to smooth out the cobblestones along the way. And, you know, select hard, buy quality. I'll tell you this: an expensive dog costs less in the long run.
Yeah.
A quality dog. I shouldn't say expensive. A quality dog costs less in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something your viewers should need to understand. Deal with a breeder that stands behind their stuff. Get one that's got a guarantee if you can get a guarantee. And a guarantee doesn't mean the dog's guaranteed to work. It just means the breeder will replace it if it doesn't. But even then, there's a lot, you know, there's going to be, don't tell me, I had one guy out here, I hate to tell you this, but I had one guy that came out here for obedience work. I trained his dog obedience, and I could tell the dog was abused. I was like, man, this is going to be a hard case because this dog has been abused. And I can tell if you abuse your dog. If I raise my hand up to grab my hat and adjust it on my head, and the dog flinches thinking I'm going to hit him with my hat, then I know that you've done hit. I may just be adjusting my hat. The dog's scared. I'm like, why is the dog scared just because I raised my hand? It's because you've been hitting the dog. Yep. Well, I trained the dog for a month. I taught the dog sit down, heel, stay, and come, on leash and off leash. The man got here, and in the first minute, I showed this man how to do the stuff with the dog. And then the first minute he had the leash, the dog wasn't listening to him, but he wasn't doing it right. And since he wasn't doing it right, he thought the dog wasn't listening, but really the dog just didn't know what he was saying because he wasn't doing it right. And he got frustrated, and he kicked the dog. And then he kicked the dog again. And after he kicked the dog twice, I said, you know, you're going to undo everything that I just built. And I got the leash back, and I showed him how to do it again. And then when he was leaving, he had this leather tassel hanging off his belt loop. And I thought it was a keychain. And I was like, I like your keychain. And he goes, oh, that's a leather scrap. He'll be lucky if he doesn't get it by the end of the day. This is an 80-year-old man. And I thought, oh, my goodness. I was like, this is a case where I wish I could just keep the dog and send the man home. But,
and
but my point is,
that's rough.
You know, you can't expect the dog to work if you're always breaking the dog's spirit. So, you know, I might guarantee a dog to work, but if you come out here doing stupid stuff, I can't fix stupid, you know?
No, we damn sure can't, bud. Ain't no doubt about that. But man, like I said, I really appreciate you doing this, getting on here and talking with us and sharing your knowledge. And I'm sure we're going to have some listeners. They're going to have some questions, and they're going to want to know some more stuff. So maybe in the near future, we might be calling back on you to do another segment. And if we can get some listeners, you know, that have some topics they would like to know some stuff about, would you be interested in doing that again? Sure, just holler at me again, and we'll set something up. Dude, I'm telling you, I appreciate this, and I probably wore your ear out tonight. No, dude, it's hard for me to find people that'll talk. Usually, I'm doing all the talking. And I mean, hell, I still do all the talking, most of it. But I mean, it's like, with the way that you explain things, you can take something that most people would have to have an education to understand, and you can dumb it down for us. You can teach. You're a teacher, and that's a parent, you know. And because there's several things in there that you explained that made it really easy for me myself. So, like I said, I really appreciate you doing that. The library and the genetics analogy works good. Yes, in my opinion, because you got the gene pool as a library. The book is the genome. The chapters are the chromosomes. The page numbers are the loci. The traits are the topics that are discussed. And then the different versions of the Bible is the male and the female. Mm-hmm. So they're talking about the same topic,
but they have different words, different combinations of the same traits.
Yep.
A trait is like hair color is a trait. Brown is not a trait. Blonde is not a trait. What that blonde and brown, those are what's called phenotype. They're different versions of the same trait. The trait is hair color, but the versions are brown and blonde and red.
Oh, okay. See, it's just like stuff like that. I mean, it's just, I didn't know that.
Yeah, gameness and curring is the same trait. It's just they're different versions of that trait. Gameness is determination, and curring is the lack of determination, but it's the same trait. It's just different versions of the trait.
Yeah. Yeah, we're definitely going to have to do another damn episode pretty soon. I can see that in the near future. Because I'm gonna dig around in my little noggin here I got. I ain't got much brain, but I'm gonna see what I can pull out. And like I said, I'm sure some of these listeners out there, I know two of them for sure that I personally know they're gonna be like, hey, we need to ask him this. And so be prepared on that one. And we're gonna put all your links to your info, to your social media stuff. We'll put that in our description down below. And that way, maybe people that, like I said, they can get on your YouTube channel and get some visual to go with some of this auditory.
Yep. And I have one thing, I hate to say it, but I'm going to have to say it because I do work about 60 to 80 hours a week.
Let's say it.
And that is your viewers, if they do have a question, before you call me and ask me a question, please do some basic research online, because I have a ton of information on my website. And in fact, I can send a link to your son. We have a page just about K-9 genetics.
Well, let's just do that.
Read that page on K-9 genetics. Learn the information on that page before you call me and ask a question, because if, we have people that call me up and they say, hey, tell me what you think of this pedigree. And I'll look at the pedigree, and I don't know a single dog in there for 4 generations.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can tell you it's line bred.
Yeah.
I can tell you it's inbred. I can tell you it's scatterbred, but I can't tell you anything about the dogs.
Yeah, because you ain't seen the dogs.
Yeah, I can't tell you anything.
That's right.
It doesn't matter if it's line bred or inbred or scatterbred if I don't know the dogs. So, there's no secret formula. People need to learn basics. And my thoughts are, you've seen the dogs and you're asking me about your dogs. I mean, that makes no sense.
Yeah. No, I can definitely see that. So, well, Mr. Lee, man, thank you again for doing this. And
yes, sir.
If there's ever anything that we can do, if you need us for anything, which just let us know. We'd be more than glad to do whatever.
I'd like to learn more about what it is that you do, and maybe someday we'll have a podcast of y'all on our channel.
Okay, that sounds good to me. I'd definitely like to, get with you some back and forth, and like you said, kind of talk some. But like I said, I know you're busy. We're the same way. We're busy. We'll make it work some form or fashion.
Yeah, I mean, I know that. I might have the answers to some of your questions, but I'm sure you have the answers to some of mine. So that's,
maybe,
yeah,
maybe so.
So y'all have a blessed day.
Yes, sir.
And thank you for inviting me on there.
We appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson.
Yes.
All right, have a good night. See you. All right, bye. All right, man, dude, he's got so much knowledge. He's a wealth of knowledge, and he can explain it. I mean, but some of the stuff he's talking is like, I know a lot of times I play the dumbass all the time, but there was quite a few things that I knew. I knew all the things he talked about. I knew the words. I knew a lot of the meanings, but the situations and how to put them together, how to take them. I actually learned some stuff right then. And if you listeners out there don't believe me, ask Nate. I took notes. I got stuff wrote down, and I'm going to study them. And Nate's going to get you some links put in the description down below to check out some of his Mr. Robinson stuff. And we're going to do that. Also, like he said, we might need to check out X, y'all.
Oh, yeah.
See how that platform works.
Have to do something on there.
Yeah, but until the next time, I'm freezing my ass off, and I'm fixing to go in the house, get some coffee. Appreciate y'all. Thank y'all so much. Hope everybody has a happy holiday for the next 2 or 3 holidays we got coming up in line. So, and if y'all come see us, let's go hunting.
Thank you.
Till next time. Bye.
Hope y'all enjoyed that episode. Stay tuned for our new episodes every Monday and Wednesday. For questions, advertising, or just to chat, email DixieDoggers01@gmail.com.